everyone. It is Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. and we are calling this regular meeting of the Wake County Board of Education to order. I'd like to welcome those of you that are watching at home and those that are here in person. These meetings are conducted for the purpose of carrying on the official business of the school system. The public is cordially invited to attend board meetings to observe the board as it conducts its official business. Persons who willfully interrupt, disrupt, or cause disturbances at an official meeting may be directed to leave by the presiding officer. Members of the audience should show respect for speakers by refraining from loud comments or other disruptions. Disruptions by any person or persons of a public meeting will be subject to action in accordance with General Statute 143-318.17. We have all 9 board members with us tonight, as well as Superintendent Moore and our board attorney, Mr. Blumberg. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, if you could please stand for the presentation of our colors from Sanderson High School's award-winning Air Force Junior ROTC. Commanding and carrying the American flag is Cadet Riley Dawson. The North Carolina flag is Cadet Sebastian Brown, and the rifles are carried by Cadet Kaya Sledge and Cadet Isaiah Prince.
College.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. College. 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 Park.
And many, many thanks to the Sanderson JROTC for being here to present those colors during this month. At this time, we move on to, well, I got rid of my agenda, so I believe we move on to the superintendent's comments. Thank you very much. This is a team effort. Superintendent Moore.
Thank you and good evening. Congratulations to Wayne McCoy of Cary High School, who on May 5th was named the 2023 WCPSS Teacher Assistant of the Year. Mr. McCoy has been an instructional assistant for 9 years and is currently serving in an extended content classroom, standards classroom. He also performs many extra duty roles at Cary High, driving the bus for field trips, arriving early and staying late to assist special education students during arrival and dismissal, and serving as a coach on 3 different athletic teams. His principal, Nolan Bryant, wrote in his nomination, Mr. McCoy was selected by our staff because of his dedication in the classroom, his role as a mentor, and his commitment to supporting our extracurricular programs. For all these reasons and more, we believe Mr. Wayne McCoy is hands down the best choice for Wake County Teacher Assistant of the Year. As Mr. McCoy's exceptional service indicates, IAs play numerous essential roles at their schools, inside and outside the classroom. I'm grateful to our more than 2,500 IAs in the district for their support of their students and for everything they do to keep schools running smoothly. Again, congratulations to Mr. McCoy on this well-deserved recognition. 17 WCPSS students are among the more than 2,500 winners across the country in the latest round of National Merit Scholarships. Winners were chosen from a submission pool of more than 15,000 students. Each winner will receive a $2,500 scholarship from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. In this second of 4 rounds of the prestigious scholarship program, winners from each state are judged to have the strongest combination of accomplishment, skills, and potential for success in rigorous college studies. Congratulations to these scholarship winners who are listed on our Facebook page. Finally, this evening, 2 of our teachers are among 38 statewide who were selected to participate in the Keenan Fellows Program for Teacher Leadership at NC State University next year. Congratulations to Edwin Davis, a science teacher at Broughton Magnet High School, and Kimberly McDonald, a career development coordinator at Wake STEM Early College High School. The Keenan Fellows Program provides teachers with experiences in industry and research settings and supports them in using their internship experiences to improve their schools, district, and communities. As a part of their fellowship, Keenan Fellows will spend 3 weeks immersed with local experts in STEM fields. They will receive a $5,000 stipend and participate in 80 hours of professional development that focuses on project-based learning, elevating teachers' voices, and strengthening the ties between the school and the local community. They will also receive peer coaching and mentoring. Mr. Davis will work with Dr. Amy Maddox of UNC Chapel Hill and a team of researchers on a project seeking to understand how cells undergo the step-by-step process of division. Ms. McDonald will work with Spark NC to design learning experiences that teachers across the state can use to expand students' exposure to careers in technology. She will be immersed with industry partners who are using technology to drive growth in local economies. Being named a Keenan Fellow is both a high honor and an excellent opportunity for these educators to grow in their profession, expanding their capacity to deliver relevant, rigorous, and meaningful instruction to their students. Congratulations again. This concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. My comments tonight are pretty brief. I want to thank our 32 high school seniors who were selected as part of our Future Teachers program. This has been an incredible program kind of to grow your own. So folks who are interested in becoming teachers that are currently in Wake County Public Schools, please reach out to your counselor to learn more about the Future Teachers program. You earn a stipend and get professional development throughout your time in college, and you graduate high school with a contract in hand to come back and teach in Wake County Public Schools. One of the things that was noteworthy was not only having a teacher who was a part of our first cohort who is in Mr. Swanson's district, and I'll let him talk a little more about that if that's part of his comments, but also to hear the love and the passion of teaching from people who are in central office positions, and how that time in the classroom is still something that they greatly love and reflect on and draw upon and believe in this district. And it really is one of the best professions that anyone can choose. And I just want to thank these 32 seniors for choosing this profession, and we look forward to seeing them in the classroom in 4 years. And that concludes my comments. Mr. Hegarty?
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. I appreciate it. I keep my comments brief tonight. I have 4 items that I would like to touch on. We were excited in District 7 to welcome the chair of our county commission, Ms. Shanika Thomas, who came to speak at a ribbon cutting for Barton Pond Elementary. Now, May ribbon cutting for school might seem like it's a little late, like getting a Christmas present in July, but trust me, this was a ribbon cutting that was long overdue, and the opening of a school has been a real exercise in resilience for Principal Stephanie Costa and her staff. There's some challenges to overcome. Everyone rallied together, and all the Barton Pond Bullfrogs had a tremendous first year. And so we were so happy. The superintendent was there, area superintendent Cedric Moore, myself, Cedric Williams, sorry, and several other dignitaries. And so thank you for that invitation. And again, congratulations to the Bullfrogs. Superintendent Moore had already mentioned the Wake County Teacher Assistant of the Year banquet, and I just have to say I was fortunate enough to attend also with Dr. Matillo, Area Superintendent Jonathan Enns, and I cannot say enough about the winner, Mr. Wayne McCoy Jr. Superintendent Moore already highlighted so many of his wonderful accomplishments, three-sport coach, the hours he spends as a youth mentor, but it was probably one of the most inspirational speeches I've heard given as an acceptance speech in any of these types of functions. And I know there were a lot of people around those head tables that were looking out to Mr. McCoy wondering how quickly we could get him a teaching license. But by Mr. McCoy's own words, he had cited the wisdom passed down to him by his father to grow where you are planted. And I think we're very, very fortunate that he is remaining in place and just being a paragon of excellence in the role that he's chosen to take on. So congratulations again to Mr. McCoy Jr. Congratulations are also due to all of the students in the district that participated in C-SPAN's Student Cam documentary competition. They had representatives from C-SPAN's headquarters in D.C. come and deliver the cash prizes locally to some of our students. We had many participants and many fine entries, and it was great to see that recognition from the great public service that C-SPAN provides. And then finally, we did have our last BAC meeting of the year at Sycamore Creek Elementary. Since our last meeting on internet security, we had representatives from the Department of Justice Consumer Protection Division come in and discuss different ways we can work to keep our kids safe from online predators, to be aware of content that's out there, discussed parental controls, and had a great conversation with question and answer period. We are shutting things down for the school year, but we will be recruiting BAC officers for next year. So if you are in District 7, Northwestern Wake County, have a child in one of the District 7 schools and are interested in service on our BAC, please reach out, send an email, and we'd love to talk to you about a board position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haggerty. Ms. Waters.
Thank you. So many wonderful things happening across the district and in District 4. I'd like to highlight just a few of those things. I want to thank communities and schools for the opportunity to attend Night in the Blue at Ligon Middle School, which was a great time of engagement with nearly 100 middle school girls on a Friday night in pajamas. And so I see Principal Duvall sitting over there, and just really appreciate the opportunity to see our supports for our students in a really unique way that focus on social, emotional learning, self-care, and the opportunity to engage with high school students. And so so wonderful to be in that environment and to look at how intentional we are in making sure that all of our students receive supports and encouragement and inspiration as they are in their journey, and do it in a very special and unique way. So very pleased to have been a part of that. I also want to lift up the State of Enloe, which is an annual event that that focuses on important topics every year. This year, the focus was on school safety. We had a wonderful panel that included Enloe Principal, Dr. Jordan, along with Russ Smith, who is our senior director for the Office of Security, as well as Dr. Paul Coe and Dr. Elena Ashburn, who were there to provide us with some really good information about school safety. And so it was an important time to have engagement and to see where we are and what concerns the public has and what questions needed to be answered. And I would really like to highlight how I was so pleased to be in the room and then look back and see my colleague, Ms. Monica Johnson-Hoffler, there in support, and just really appreciate her commitment to the district over her long tenure as a board member, and then also at individual schools and across the district beyond where she represents. And so that event, as I said, is annual, and so I can't wait to see what next year's topic is and how we will uplift and provide information that is important to the community. And lastly, I want to highlight the District 4 BAC meeting, which was last night. Such a great opportunity to bring together all of our school community communities and to be able to get information that is relevant and really up to date. And so one of the things we focused on last night was the superintendent search. We had an update from Christine Sheaf, who is legal counsel and director of policy for the North Carolina School Boards Association. Lots of great questions from the attendees and a lot of great ideas on how we can continue to make this a process that forwards and centers what the community wants and needs in our next leader. And so really pleased to have had that conversation and that input from our attendees. I also want to talk about the panel that we had at the BAC last night. Really wonderful to see Dr. Chavis there to represent our equity team, and he was so kind enough to bring some of his staff members with him. Dr. Maria Rosa Rangel and Bria Wright were on the panel, and one of the highlights for the panel, again, talking about student voice, we had two seniors from Enloe, one who was off to UNC and one off to Morehouse College, and it was great to get a perspective about the importance of equity from the lens of our young students, and want to continue to lift up Policy 1150 as it is continued to be operationalized in the work that we do. And so really great to have a BAC meeting that focused both on the superintendent search as well as our equity policy. And so looking forward to more opportunities to engage in our BACs. And Vice Chair Haggerty, I appreciate your comments about letting people know that this is a great opportunity to serve and represent your school community, and also to engage with others who have a strong interest in ensuring that our district continues to be the awesome and amazing place that we have so much time to be able to invest in education of our next generation of leaders. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waters and Ms. Edmonds.
Thank you. Last night I attended the Senior Awards Ceremony at Vernon Malone College and Career Academy. It was a great event with a great group of students receiving scholarships, some going into the military, some attending Wake Tech, and others moving on to four-year universities. I really enjoyed being with that group of students. This morning I had the honor of being at Swift Creek as they were recognized as a Positivity Project Shield School. A little over 800 schools across the country applied for this distinction, and only 11 were chosen, and Swift Creek is among them, and the only one in Wake County to receive this honor. The celebration this morning was a lot of fun. The kids were very attentive and excited, and it was a really good time. And Area Superintendent Mr. Jonathan Enns joined me at that. I'm excited to get to some choral performances this week and the first of our graduations next week. That's exciting as a new board member to attend the graduations. I want to thank all of you and the public who have advocated to county commissioners on behalf of our board funding request. I ask that you continue to send those communications to commissioners as they deliberate their budget, which includes support for Wake County Public Schools. And finally, I want to comment on the cost of school meals and the fact that we are faced with raising those costs. I want the public to be aware of what the North Carolina General Assembly is about to do with private school voucher funding. Today, lawmakers invest $133 million per year in private school vouchers. That's $133 million of taxpayer money that go to subsidize private school tuition. Two bills, Senate Bill 406 and House Bill 823, are proposed now, and if they pass, voucher spending will go up more than $400 million in 2023-25. Or excuse me, 2024-25, $400 million on private school tuition. And these bills also raise the income eligibility so that anyone, regardless of how much money they make per year, will have access to a private school voucher. This is what lawmakers are doing versus funding universal school meals. There is a coalition actively working to pass legislation to fund school meals. That organization is School Meals for All NC. It is a North Carolina-based group. They have a website, School Meals for All NC, and I know they would welcome your support and your advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ng.
Good evening. Just wanted to let you know that I had always have a good time coming to the student recognition last Tuesday, and it was just so great to see all the children being recognized for their accomplishments, not just as a student, but also as a person, and just the kind of people that they are becoming. And so it was very uplifting for me to see. Today we had in our meeting talking about the career and technical education offerings that we have in our Wake County public schools, and there'll be more. I'm sure that there'll be more mentioning in the weeks to come. And I just went back to my recent tour of Wakefield High School and the virtual enterprise class they had there, and just the way that it was developing these young people as future entrepreneurs and business people, and the way that they were developing their confidence in themselves. And so it was really just incredible to see. And I'm looking forward to going on the tour this Friday of North Wake College and Career Academy, and so I'm optimistic that I'm going to see more uplifting stories there. I would be remiss if I didn't talk because of my background in medical field. Today I just got an email from the hospital that I work at that they were finally going mask optional, and it just, as of May 11th, last week, it was the end of the federal COVID public health emergency, and I wish that it would be the end of the national crisis, but it has had long-lasting ramification. Just being in the school board, it has, I have seen the effects on our school budget and the hourly rates that we have had to increase to keep up with the competition in our community. Our education, in terms of the learning loss that we've seen in our students, and the lessons that we have to, hard lessons that we had to learn in terms of virtual learning and the pros and cons of that. And then also with our kids' social development, the behaviors that we've seen in the recent months, and then the increasing reliance on social media and the negative effects it has had on our kids' self-image and the kind of time away from really productive conversations that the kids can have. But there are some good things coming out of it, out of this pandemic. I don't want this to ever happen again. However, what we've learned is that there is a butterfly effect in terms of the things that happens in society. Actions have consequences, and the kind of the rippling effects of one decision causing a rippling effects on others. So I talked about this before in terms of societal, the kind of the employment or unemployment that people had to go through, and then having to increase their hourly wages to try to get people back in the workforce, and also the thing that most impacted me was the increasing parental engagement that has happened as a result of this pandemic. Parents really have gotten to become more involved in our children's education. I mean, that is part of the reason why I'm here. And I thank all the people who have had the courage to stand up, to take a stance for their children's well-being, for their children's education, and that they are continuing to take a stand. So thank you so much.
Mr. Hershey.
Thank you. I want to thank Principal Lay at Stowe Elementary for hosting our BAC yesterday. We had an extremely thoughtful conversation around the superintendent search. I want to say congratulations to Carroll Middle School something I didn't know about. It was the first Lego League Challenge, and they won 2 trophies. First place champions in robotic performance awards. I know sometimes there are conversations around reading, writing, and arithmetic, but between that competition, between the CTE presentation we had today, which was fantastic, and being at STEMposium just 13 days ago, there is really so much more to education, and I love seeing our students excelling in these fields. Lastly, I just want to say good luck to all of our Wake County, actually 2 things. First of all, excellent job, Sanderson, our JROTC, at presenting the colors and representing District 6. And good to see all of you here from JROTC, from the county. Look forward to you guys presenting shortly. And then lastly, I want to wish all our student athletes currently in spring state playoffs. I think it's lacrosse, soccer, softball, baseball. Track may have finished already. Track has not finished yet? Oh, I was given some bad information. Oh, okay.
It's just that none of my kids' teams are in the playoffs that got past county, so sorry for the bad information.
Got it. Count? Yes, okay. Making me look bad here. But I want to give a little special shout out to the Wake Forest softball team, because they will always have a place in my heart since I coached there for 10 years. But good luck to all our student athletes across the entire county in the next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Next time, your track information needs to come from Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Ms. Caulfield.
Thank you. I do not have a whole lot to report this time, but it doesn't mean that we are not ridiculously busy. I know many students are preparing for graduation and all the exciting things that are coming down the road. Just please be careful as we enter this exciting time. I know that you're about to enjoy a very special time in your life as you get ready to prepare and move on to your next journey. But it's at this time that sometimes everybody forgets a little bit of safety, a little bit of caution while you're so excited. I remember when I was in high school, we used to have the car outside. It was the infamous car that came from the fire department to remind everybody. It came out at prom time and it came out at graduation time. So I know you're all excited out there, but please be smart. Speaking of being careful, there are plenty of our students that go through our Jordan driving program, and I wanted to mention another program, Brakes, that I think is a really good program for all drivers, especially new drivers, that it puts you into real-life situations, and I think it's a very powerful program. I'm excited to be able to take advantage of that. I'm mentioning the program. I have not done it yet, so I could come back and report, but I've heard really good things about the program. I've seen what it does, just haven't been able to take it live. But I mention it now because the registration is going on, and I think for our children, and as we're talking about safety, I think it is a great program to go along with our Jordan Driving School program. And that is kind of all I have right now. Thank you.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you. I will follow my colleagues and keep mine very brief as well. I want to say last week we celebrated Teacher Appreciation Week, and I just want to officially echo, just thank the teachers and all staff for the great things that they do. And understand that our teachers are the backbones of our education system, and it's those long-lasting memories that they make in our classroom, so I really want to thank them for that. I had the opportunity of visiting Weatherstone Elementary School and meeting their new principal, and I want to thank them for their warm welcoming and their tour. It's always exciting to see the great things that are happening in the classroom. And as a former high school teacher, it's always great to engage with the little ones and hearing some of the great things that they're sharing. Friday, I had the opportunity of attending Miss Baggett's annual Mother's Day celebration. And I have to say, this was her last one because she's officially retiring at the end of the year. So whoever is going to take on the task of continuing this great tradition, please keep me posted so I can attend next year. So the students did they presented a brunch to their parents and to their mothers, rather, and sung 2 classic songs. The Temptations, My Girl, but they substitute the words to My Mom. And then Sonny and Cher's I Got You, Babe, and their version was I Got You, Mom. And so hearing that and seeing how they were able to perform was really great and exciting. I did leave out before they went to their, words are escaping me, field day. So I didn't get to see all the great energy that they had there, but their songs was really great. And also wanted to say to our new future teachers that I had the opportunity of attending with Chair Mahaffey, congratulations, and we look forward to the great work that you're doing. I was hoping Superintendent Moore was going to share the story of the young man that she shared in her remarks, but it was a very moving and great experience. And so looking forward to having more educators that are homegrown into the district. And for those that are juniors, going to be seniors next year, and if you're interested in becoming an educator, please reach out and do not miss out on that great opportunity. So that concludes my remarks, so thank you.
Ms. Johnson-Hustler.
Thank you. I will start with, thanking Student Assignment Susan Pulliam last night. There's been a series of our student assignment, and I surprised her because I had been in Fuquay at multiple of my schools all day yesterday, so I was a surprise visitor. But the energy was amazing, and it's probably my first time being on the board that we've gotten this far ahead of talking about student assignment. And she did mention another board member had attended, and parents appreciated it. They may not necessarily like the decisions we make, but they liked having this much of a runway to have a discussion about what the impact to them will be. And I certainly enjoyed her energy matched mine, so we were really hyper last night. It was the end of the day for me. So thanks. And she had a team of staff with her. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that this is also probably the first event I've been to where we actually did have language access available for the families. And so for me, that speaks to as policy chair, as difficult as it is to go through the policies, the implications for our district are life-changing for so many families. And so thank you to my Siri doesn't agree with me, apparently. But thank you to my colleagues who have endured this rigorous process we're going through to our policies, which to that end, for those of you who've sent emails, I'm responding here publicly regarding Policy 3200. It is on tonight for first reading. Our policies have more than one reading, especially because we have the opportunity to make changes. And for those of you who did not watch our last policy meeting, I was teasing Board Member Caulfield that I gave her homework last time for this policy, so you will hear it again from us, and homework for everyone to continue the discussion. But thank you for your emails. I had the great opportunity, well, it's mixed feelings. Garner Education Foundation, who I adore, do an amazing event at the end of the year, so it's May. So I have mixed feelings because there were a lot of retirees that were hard to see that they're retirees being recognized. But it's a recognition program, so for our retirees, our teachers of the year, our IAs of the year, nationally board certified, and renewals. So always a great time to recognize the schools, and they always remind me, because I always forget every year, that for those of you who know, the Garner Performing Arts Center used to be East Garner Elementary, and so everybody who stood up was like, this was my elementary school. Also, we had a lot of people who were retiring for the second and third time. That speaks, and I asked them to return for a fourth, given we have a teacher shortage. So we had one who had been with our district 47 years. This is the only district she's ever taught in. And she has retired, so she took a 6-month sabbatical in the 47 years between her first retirement. So that speaks to the commitment of the community, but also it is okay to retire. But so thank you, Garner Education Foundation, and the community members there. And speaking of Garner, we had our last BAC as well of the year. And as you all have heard me say, I've moved to roundtables because it is the best way to get information from our community. And so thank you, Averysboro Road Elementary Principal Stewart, for hosting us. Thank you, Averysboro Baptist Church, for giving us a full meal with fried chicken. Well, we still had a meeting. We similarly had roundtables on the top issues that come before the board. So I went through my email and said, here are the topics that I get the most emails about. Please give me your feedback. So I got lots of feedback on discipline, well-being, policies, and transportation. The funniest is everybody wanted a 4-day work week to reduce the load on transportation. Everything else, we had great feedback, but I did let them know that that is up to the General Assembly. I can't give them a 4-day work week. And then we also talked about the superintendent, so they helped build out questions we did the first round of questions. Last this BAC, they started thinking about the second round of questions they'd like to have as we pursue hiring our next superintendent. So thank you to District 2. And we had a lot of people join us because all of our meetings are open. You've heard our colleagues say that, but it is an opportunity not only to be in relationship with the community, but also to be in relationship with your board members, as my colleagues have already said. It is indeed playoff. Willow Spring High School, no S, does not have a senior class, but they indeed made it to past the first round of soccer playoffs. And so that's really exciting for a new school because they're building all of their history for their school. So hats off to them. One of the athletes, her mom used to actually be our deputy in here from the Sheriff's Department, scored 2 goals last night. So Destiny Arrington, thank you for your commitment to the team. They won 3-0 and she scored 2 of those goals. So hats off to Willow Spring. We're excited about building the legacy at Willow Spring. We have our JROTC here, and again, like my colleagues have said, thank you. District 2 has 2 Purple Star schools, South Lakes Elementary and Willow Springs with an S Elementary. And Purple Star schools are schools that demonstrate military-friendly practices and commitment to military-connected student and families. So thank you to all of our schools who put forth the effort, and certainly thank you to the 2 schools who have received that honor. I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you that I love Wake Up and Read. I think all of my... Have you volunteered yet? I know you're on the list. So I was at Lincoln Heights yesterday to set up what you all know. I am obsessed with Wake Up and Read. It's my favorite. I get to see the kids choose books and they're building their libraries. Yesterday was the first time I've ever set up. Much easier to be volunteering than setting up. But we had a lot of students helping us, so a great experience for them to actually see how you set up a library system as well. So we've rounded out the District 2 schools for Wake Up and Read this school year. And lastly, I have the great opportunity to be at Lincoln Heights with Senator Batch for Take a Legislator to School Day. Thank you to our educators and our students alike who participated in panels. It's always great to be at Lincoln Heights. Many of you know it was one of the schools on my list that we really need to grow and change, and we have now exceeded my wildest dreams that the school is very full. And a lot of great ways that they've instituted their magnet. But we had great feedback from our students, and I don't know what Senator Batch's favorite part was, but mine was all the hugs. Because the littles love Senator Batch. So thank you to all of our elected officials who are supporting our schools. And as I tell people, you don't have to show up in the building to support them. You can support them by advocating with your elected officials to continue to support public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. And I had just a couple of things that I had remiss. I did mention our cadets that came and presented the colors from Sanderson, and I just once again want to thank Cadet Riley Dawson, Cadet Sebastian Brown, Cadet Kia Sledge, and I'm sorry for mispronouncing it earlier, and Cadet Isaiah Prince. I want to wish a happy birthday to our board member Lynn Edmonds. And since graduation season is upon us, for those of you that are here that are seniors, that are graduating, take it that time, remember that teacher, see if they're still teaching, and take a moment and thank them. And I was reminded of that this weekend. My mother was a school nurse in my hometown, and she received a flower delivery for Mother's Day, and I happened to be there to surprise her. And I think she was more excited to see one of her former students who has, left elementary school, graduated from college, is out living his life, has a career, than she was to get the flowers. It means so much to your teachers to hear how you're doing and what you're up to. And it will mean more than any teacher appreciation gift to say, hey, you know, Miss So-and-so, Mr., you know, please, I just want to say thanks. I remember being in your class. And take that time and just say thank you. I know it's easier to do while you still have a Wake County email address. So, but I just want to say that as graduation season is upon us and starts, is it next week? Yeah, next week. So, yep. So, thank you. At this time, we will approve the meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Chair Mahaffey,
Yep,
I'd like to amend the agenda.
absolutely.
If we could remove item Roman numeral 9, 3E, meal prices for 2023-24 off the calendar and put that on action, off the consent agenda and put that on action.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Vice Chair Hegarty for the motion and Mr. Swanson for the second. Again, that is approval of the agenda with the amended change. And we will revisit that again when we do the consent, just to make sure we're in compliance with everything. Mr. Blumberg?
Yes, there's a question about policy 3200 and whether it's, we talked about it, about whether it's on second reading or not. There was a reference to it being on first reading and public comment. It is set to be on second reading tonight on the consent. I just want to
Yes.
make sure that, and so with that, the policy would be approved unless there's any further feedback from the board this time around.
Yeah, I believe that initial request to remove it was rescinded.
I understand.
Yes, Ms. Caulfield?
So I just to confirm, are you saying that 3,200 is on the table to be approved today?
First, on second reading, correct. It was approved at the last meeting on first reading, so it would be set for second reading tonight on consent, which is the standard approach of first reading. It is done sort of in the actions, and then the second reading would be on consent. So it's following the standard process that would be done for approval of a policy.
So at what point can I comment on that particular item?
For something on the consent agenda?
Yes.
I think when we go to approve the consent agenda, unless there's a motion to pull it.
Okay. So I guess I would make a motion to pull it. I'm not sure that we're actually ready to move forward with a lot of the feedback that I'm getting on it, particularly to the read aloud part and the pervasively vulgar part. So I would, I do appreciate all the work that they put into it, but I would really like to have more discussion on the policy itself, on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable.
So, Ms.
before-
Caulfield, are you proposing an amendment to the motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I second it. I actually just texted Mr. Bloomberg about pulling off. That's why he brought it up.
Okay. And Mr. Blumberg, procedurally, is that done now or is that done at the consent agenda, just to confirm?
So my understanding is that any board member can pull an item from the consent to action. So I think that it can just be the agenda can be approved with the understanding that both the meal price and policy 3200 would be moved to action.
Okay.
And then you can proceed in that fashion. And yes, there was a question that had come up about it being announced as first reading, and it is second, so I felt there needed to be clarity on that before you all approved the agenda.
If it's helpful, since we made the motion to move the first item, would you be okay with amending it and then adding?
So we had a motion and a second to amend it, so then we vote on.
So rather than voting on the first motion, we would amend the motion removing item Roman numeral 9, 3E, meal prices from the consent agenda. We would amend it, and then we would also remove item Roman numeral 9, number 7, A, policy 3200, also from the consent agenda,
Okay.
and move both to action.
All right, so Vice Chair Haggerty, you amend your motion to reflect that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So then, is there still a second, Mr. Swanson? Okay, so we have an amended motion from Vice Chair Haggerty with a second from Mr. Swanson to pull both the meal plan and policy 3200 off the consent agenda onto action. Any further comments or questions from board members? All right, seeing none, with that motion as amended, do we have approval of the meeting agenda as amended? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, thank you. Okay. We now move on to our recognition items. Our first recognition item is a first, I believe, for this board, and that is the recognition of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. With that, we have Mr. Drew Cook, who is going to introduce our speakers for tonight, which includes some students, as well as Mr. Gary Duvall of Ligon Middle School. Mr. Cook.
All right. Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Haggerty, Superintendent Moore, and board members. We do appreciate the opportunity, as Ms. Mahaffey just referenced, to have a few minutes on the board agenda to share tonight and highlight and celebrate two different groups of people this evening. As you know well, it is always best practice to let our teachers, our administrators, and our students do most of the talking and the presenting. And as you can probably see by the diverse and sharp-looking group in front of you tonight, that is exactly our plan in both of these cases. We'll begin first with a presentation to honor and recognize Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is celebrated each year during the month of May. As we highlight connections to our strategic plan, this work is part of our district's broader ongoing efforts to ensure that teaching and learning opportunities are consistently inclusive and supportive of all parts of our community. As is reflected, as you see on the screen, in our district's core belief statements numbers 1 and number 5, our intent is to ensure that all students and families see themselves lifted up and reflected in a positive light in every school and every classroom across the district, and not just in a single month, but every single day. To that end, our teachers, our administrators, our district staff work to ensure that multiple opportunities are provided to make connections to core standards, curriculum, and instructional activities across grade levels and content areas. By intentionally sharing resources and educating ourselves on the culture and heritage of our students, as lead learners, we will, in the long term, increase the ability and capacity of school and district staff to create meaningful instructional activities where every student accurately sees their culture and their heritage reflected in their learning. Again, relevant, rigorous, and meaningful learning each day. And speaking of lead learners, at this time, it is my privilege to introduce my friend and longtime colleague, Mr. Gary Duvall, principal of Ligon Magnet Middle School, who will share a little bit about his personal experiences and insights, some historical background and perspective, and a little about what is happening in the Wake County Public School System, and specifically Heritage High School, which you'll get to see more of firsthand in just a few minutes. Mr. Duvall, welcome.
Good evening, Board Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and fellow board members. A big thank you to Mr. Cook for kicking off this evening. It is an honor to be able to present here today regarding the observance of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Island Heritage Month. This month has a special meaning for me due to my Taiwanese heritage. This month serves as a special opportunity to be able to acknowledge, celebrate, and highlight the contributions from all people who identify as Asian American, Pacific Islander, and their impact on society as a whole. It is my hope that through our time together this evening, I'm able to share some of my lived experience while also highlighting how this month came to be and hopefully being able to report out some interesting facts. I've been fortunate to be an educator within Wake County WCPS for the past 20 years. Through that time, I've served as a teacher, a coach, an assistant principal, and now a principal. Through this journey, I've been fortunate to work at wonderful, diverse schools across our district. But even within each diverse school climate, I have felt my unique cultural identity as a school leader in each place I have worked. As one of the only Asian American principals within our district, this point was driven home to me a few years back when I had the opportunity to attend a national equity conference, where one of the breakout sessions had us in collaborative conversation groups based on our ethnic identities. Even in a space like this with fellow educators who were identified as Asian American Pacific Islander, I was the only principal in the room of almost 100 educators. This definitely stood out to me as I was shocked that even with this national convergence of educators, so few school leaders who looked like me held leadership positions. As we all know, representation matters. And as we prioritize bringing on highly qualified staff members for our district, the intentional recruitment of people with diverse cultural identities must be a consideration in our hiring processes. I'm deeply thankful to the board for all of your support in helping to make these things happen, along with the observance of months like this for all cultural identities. I would also talk about my lived experiences has helped to drive me in helping students to feel like they're capable. And I think that's in also looking to increase access for our students and helping them drive them to see how they can make their career goals an actual reality. This is why I fully endorse and support our core beliefs, especially core beliefs 1 and 5, as we continue the ongoing work towards building school cultures where students from all ethnicities and backgrounds are embedded into inclusive learning environments, where their cultures are valued and they can see themselves in what is being taught, along with being pushed to reach their full potential each and every day. We will now move into a brief history and background on the significance of this month. Asian Pacific Heritage Month originated in June 1977 when a House resolution was introduced that called upon the President to proclaim the first 10 days of May as Asian Pacific Heritage Week. The next year, in October 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed a joint resolution designating the annual celebration. 12 years later, President George H.W. Bush signed an extension making the week-long celebration a month-long celebration. And then finally in 1992, the official designation of May as Asian Pacific Heritage Month was signed into law. The month of May was designated to commemorate the first Japanese immigration to the United States on May 7, 1853. It also honors the Chinese immigrants who worked to complete the Transcontinental Railroad on May 10, 1869. And as you may know, while the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad is often heralded as a modern marvel of human engineering, which opened up westward expansion and accelerated the industrial age in the United States, that feat also came at high cost to thousands of Chinese immigrants and other laborers that were involved in the work. Earlier this month, Governor Cooper issued an executive proclamation designating May as Asian American and Pacific Islander American Heritage Month in North Carolina to celebrate the many contributions Asian Americans have made and continue to make to North Carolina's communities, schools, and workforce. This month and every month, the Wake County Public School System recognizes and celebrates the contributions and achievements of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, both locally and globally. In the spirit of celebration and continuous learning, the next couple of slides highlight a few facts of interest pertaining to the month that directly relate to North Carolina and Wake County Public School System. So one thing of note, among North Carolina Asian American population, Chinese is the most commonly spoken language with over 30,000 speakers, followed by Vietnamese and Arabic. And then I thought another interesting fact up there is the largest Asian American ethnicity is Asian Indians, who make up 25% of the Asian American population, followed by Chinese, Vietnamese, and then Filipino. And then when we consider students and the overall makeup in Wake County Public School System, some interesting facts are Wake County has the largest population of Asian American residents at 72,000. And in 2022, we have Maria Cervania and Yalu were the first 2 Asian Americans elected to the NC legislature. And finally, whenever you consider Wake County has nearly 600 Asian American staff members who make up about 3% of our staff in the school workforce. Within Wake County Public School System, we are very fortunate that students across schools and grade levels are given the opportunity to participate and connect through coursework, extracurricular activities, and other engagement opportunities that broaden their cultural understanding. One of the many great examples of this is the Asian and International Clubs at Heritage High School. Heritage established their Chinese program in 2013. The program's focus is building on a K through 16 learning community, and then some of the things they've done has been able to share and present Chinese culture on Pack Day, participation in the Lantern Parade on Chinese New Year, Asian Fest, and the International Showcase. Also through this program, they complete community service projects with Wake Forest Elementary School, and they have a partnership with the UNC Chapel Hill's Asian Studies program. I would now like to introduce Ms. Wei-Jing Liu and the Heritage High School students who will be performing a cultural arrangement composed of 2 dances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duvall.
Good evening, everyone. Dear board member, it's my honor today be here to present for Heritage High School. In the past 10 years, I'm teaching in the amazing school. I'm so happy every single day I have a chance to not teaching my student language. I have chance to let them experience my culture, my heritage. So you can see on the slide, I cannot believe in the 1 year, this school year, we do so much stuff. We learn the paintbrush, we do the face painting, and we make a dumpling together. We do the lantern parade, and we do so many community services. And then we make more students not in my classroom. Outside my class, students have chance to learn the paintbrush, to play Chinese chess, and we learn the paper cutting. They learn know Chinese, so many Chinese culture. So I hope every single day we will keep doing this way. It's like my mission to share. I hope it's not just 1 month. Of course, I appreciate we honor the AAPI. I think that's a great opportunity for us. I hope every single day I have a chance, like a gift, to share my heritage. Thank you. And then our school Asia American Cultural Club student would like to present. Thank you.
Thank you. And board members, the students will be sharing their presentation with us via email. We weren't able to get it uploaded today.
Hello, we are the leaders of the Asian American Culture Club in Heritage High School, and we're here to briefly talk about what we did as a club to represent the Asian community, and also the recent event that we hosted this past April called Asia Fest. Hello, my name is Eun-Sung King, or Ava, and I am the founder/president of the Asian American Culture Club. These are my co-leaders who have greatly contributed within this club, and the event called Asia Fest, which we will discuss further in this presentation.
Hello, my name is Ariel Yoon, and I'm the Vice President of Business Establishment.
Hello, my name is Hanya. I was the director and event coordinator.
Hello, my name is Tara Foley, and I'm the treasurer.
So going briefly into what our club did monthly to represent the Asian community is that we met monthly to mostly play like traditional and trending games to make the meeting more exciting and fun for the members to experience the culture and learn from other students. And we also have the K-pop dance team, which we met weekly to practice and also perform every semester in various stages, which we are grateful to have. So going into more deeply about the Asia Fest that I mentioned before. So Asia Fest, the reason I have decided to create Asia Fest is that the main reason is to represent the Asian community that have been underrepresented within our school. And within Asia Fest, so what is Asia Fest? Asia Fest lasted all throughout the school day, which first and second period we had the cultural fair representation, and fourth period we had the talent show, which every student in our school had the option to audition and participate and show their talents and show representation. So our co-leaders will go more in depth about what we did in Asia Fest and like the limitations and implications that we had during our process. And yeah, starting off with our Vice President, Ariel Yoon.
As the Vice President of Asian American Culture Club, when it came down to the planning of the country representation booths, I found it really crucial and important to make sure that every single member that would choose to participate were responsible with designing their own booths that they chose personally with their own Asian country. And I really just wanted them to make significant process by following their established guidelines and their established goals. And we just wanted, the main reason why we even did this event is because we wanted to let every Asian country to have equal amounts of representation without letting other Asian countries overshadow each other, because that is something that we have noticed a lot happening in the media. Because of this, monitoring each and every single group was something that I also found extremely important, because we wanted to make sure that each and every group was fulfilling their duties to their fullest by doing everything correctly, doing everything quickly, and just doing everything in time, I guess. And in order to do this, we would establish priorities and stuff like that. We would establish clear expectations, clear deadlines, and we would also establish clear milestones for each and every student that would be participating. And last but not least, I feel like the communications with the performers was one of the biggest important things as well. Because communicating with the performers, letting us know how long each and every performance would take, letting us know what song they would do, and letting us know what they would be doing, I just thought it was so amazing to look at, and I just thought it gave so much happiness to each audience in the stadium.
Hello, I am Han. I was responsible for on-site directing. We had so many great talent from students that are participating in our show. And I was responsible for making sure that everything ran smoothly. And a part of my responsibility was communicating directions and other general changes to our music tech and our performers. As it was our first time running something this big, we ran into some issues. And one of those issues was having too many talent participate in the time that we were allotted. And it was a little difficult to, handle. But I did have to make some necessary changes to accommodate that. And what I did was remove talents that were performing twice, and that allowed all of our talented people to go up on stage. My on-site team was amazing. We thank them for being there and accommodating to the change, which allowed us to make the show successful. We also thank the teachers that participated in the judging. We didn't want any bias when it comes to winning first place. It was $40 on the line for Chick-fil-A. So we had 3 available teachers on site, to judge our students. And one of our students won. She was a singer. Her name is Grace. Congratulations, Grace. This was an excellent opportunity for our Asian American Culture Club to grow as a whole. We believe that this is an opportunity to bring more representation into the community as well as other schools, and we encourage that everyone participate in something like this just to spread cultural awareness. Thank you.
So there was limitations and implications to our financial status, as our processes of pre-planning was not easy as we had financial problems. To boost the amount of participation, we needed to meet specific requirements in order for the event to go smoothly. And as the treasurer, it was my duty to make sure that was good. So we thought of running a fundraiser, but because of the limitations of our school, we weren't really allowed to fundraise like that. So our final solutions were to have other club members or club organizations to donate to us, so that way we had the prizes. However, we did not have a lot of participation as much as we thought we would, but fortunately other members and our president Ava was able to get that stuff. So thank you, Ava, for saving us. But next year I definitely want to minimize the stress that a lot of our members have, because there was a lot of stress. It was the big first event, and I just want us to be better next time. And yeah, thank you.
So just making one little adjustment of what we said earlier, it was actually $30 Chipotle gift card and a trophy. Just putting that out there. Okay. So like the various events that we have hosted, we hope to continue our efforts to support and represent the Asian community within our school. Thank you.
So my Chinese Honor Society student will present the umbrella dance.
I'm so sorry.
K-pop dance. And Eva, Janela, Christy, Ariel, Liliana, Ty.
I you win the battle. 거침없이 젖지고지 보지 난지 black하면 pink 우린 예쁘잖아 savage 원해서 지나고 뺐지 눈물에도 칼로 무배기 두 손엔 가득한 fact 궁금한 건 never fact check 눈 높인 꼭대기 물 만난 물고기 좀 톡해 난 toxic 유혹해 unboxing 두번 생각해 하나는 남들처럼 착한 척이 못하니까 착각하지 마 쉽게 웃어주는 건 날 위한 거야 아직은 잘 모르겠지 그저 원하면 test me 넌 불보듯이 뻔해 맘만은 열어오겠다면 always do hit you with that do-do-do-do oh yeah oh yeah hit you with that do-do-do-do oh yeah oh yeah what you gonna do when I come through with that what you gonna do when I come through with that 뜨거워 like fire 뜨거워 like hit you with that do-do-do
Thank you, Heritage High School. Never did I ever think Blackpink would be present at our board meeting. Yes. Just want to take a moment to thank our students for coming and sharing their contributions to their school and representing their culture. And Mr. Duvall, thank you for representing the staff and administration side of things. Certainly always a wonderful time to recognize different cultural identities. And please give our congratulations to Grace for winning Asia Fest. Are there any other comments at this time from board members? No. Dr. Ng, I was hoping you would raise your hand.
I was getting a little dizzy watching those umbrellas twirling. No, it was wonderful. And just wanted to add on to the comment from Principal Duvall. The one thing in history, in American history, that didn't touch upon was the Chinese Exclusion Act. And that was one of the things that really, affected at that point in time, the ability for Chinese people to establish here. But I think that the important thing that through the last century and a half was that the Chinese people and subsequent other Asian American communities did come here, and a lot of them, come here as refugees. A lot of them come here on a legal basis, and so, there's the thing about, I think, that sums it up is resilience. I think that no matter what has happened in the community, the things that have happened with our Japanese internment camps and with the way that the Chinese people had to work hard, long hours in grocery stores, laundromats, things like that. But the fact is that we carried with us a resiliency, and to be able to go above it and beyond and rise above the challenges. So that's the challenge for all of us, to be able to rise above the difficulties that we are in and to look forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ng. Up next, we have a presentation of the JROTC program highlights from this past year, and our Senior Administrator for K-12 Healthful Living, Brian Glendenning, will be presenting. Mr. Glendenning, welcome.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here. Again, my name is Brian Glendenning. For those of you who might not know me, I'm the Senior Administrator for K-12 Healthful Living, which is also inclusive of our 8 exemplary JROTC programs. In honor of Military Appreciation Month, it's my privilege to bring student representatives from 6 of our 8 JROTC programs to deliver highlights from this year's endeavors. Tonight you will hear from Bryce Goebel from Broughton Air Force, JROTC. He's the Deputy Group Commander this year, along with being the drumline captain for the Broughton Marching Capitals. He will be attending Liberty University in the fall to earn a bachelor's degree in aeronautics for commercial and/or corporate aviation. We also have Jerry Atunku from Cary Naval JROTC. He has been an honor cadet at Cary, which is the cadet with the highest GPA among his grade group, while also balancing his commitments to the Student Council, Black Students Union, and the varsity track team. He'll be attending Princeton University in the fall. We also have from Cary Naval JROTC, Rapley Henderson. She has been recognized as an honor cadet and chosen as cadre for the Area 6 Leadership Academy, which is held at the Citadel. Outside of JROTC, Rapley is a member of the National Honor Society, and she will be furthering her education at UNC Charlotte in the fall to major in biology. Next, from Enloe Army JROTC, we have Grace Ajimang. And Grace completed her tour as battalion commander, the highest ranking cadet in the school. She was part of 2 national championship winning teams last year, unarmed duet and unarmed exhibition platoon. She was recently accepted to UNC Charlotte's Honors College and plans to major in computer science and continue her first year in the senior ROTC program. Next, also from Enloe Army JROTC, is Bobby Chowdhury. As a sophomore, Bobby was this year's company first sergeant, the primary leader and trainer for their first period on B-days. He participated in JROTC Leadership and Academic Bowl and was part of the Armed Drill National Qualifying Teams this year. He was also a member of the wrestling team and plans to continue to a 4-year institution upon graduation. Next, from Millbrook Army JROTC, is Justin Taylor. Justin is a rising senior at Millbrook and a 3-year JROTC cadet. He just completed the year as Battalion Logistics Officer. He is scheduled to complete the IB Diploma program in 2024, and he is a multi-position player on the football team. They told me all 3 positions, but there's just so many. There's just so much stuff. He also participated in varsity wrestling and track and competes with the drill and archery team. Next, from Sanderson Air Force JROTC, is Arshyla Bullock. Arshyla is a 2nd-year cadet and currently the Kitty Hawk Honor Society commander in charge of leading cadets through scholarship, service, leadership, and character building activities. She has been recognized as the JROTC Outstanding Cadet of the Year in both her 1st and 2nd years in the program. She is currently the JV cheerleading captain, stunt team member, and a member of the track team. And finally, from Wake Forest Army JROTC, is Jackson Crank. Jackson is the current battalion commander and a 4-year JROTC cadet. He received the American Legion Scholastic Excellence Award in 2021-22, the Military Order of the Purple Heart in 2020-21, Academic Excellence Award in 2020-21. He will be attending North Carolina State University, pursuing a degree in biological and agricultural engineering technologies. He also earned his Boy Scouts of America Eagle Scout this year, serving as Troop Assistant Senior Patrol Leader. Our first student to speak tonight will be Bryce Goebel from Broughton.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about Broughton's AFJROTC unit. We're the 11th JROTC unit in the nation and the first unit in North Carolina. We were designated as a founding unit for the JROTC program in North Carolina for the Air Force. We were established in 1966, and our program is rich in history and heritage. We are located in downtown Raleigh, and we are near the city's unique culture and functions, including the Governor's Mansion and other government functions. We have fulfilled requests from the Governor's Office to present colors at various speaking events, and we have also presented the colors for the Raleigh Human Relations Committee, also annually at the State Fair for the tractor pull, and we also recently presented colors at the Salvation Army for an opening baseball game. Every year, we also participate in the Veterans Day Parade and the Christmas Parade. We were once hailed by WRAL as the only entry to never have missed a Christmas parade. We also partner and serve the community. Through our Kitty Hawk Air Society, we have done care package donations for the homeless and delivered them to different shelters. We have also participated in helping an Eagle Scout food drive that raised over 2,000 pounds of food for various food banks. Some notable people we've had graduate from our program are Jonathan Mills, who graduated in 2013 and was selected for the Top Gun Navy Premier Flight School. We also have Rachel Smith, who graduated last year. She was awarded the J100 scholarship, accepted into the Flight Academy. She also did the Civil Air Patrol Flight School, completed ground school, earned a pilot's license while in high school, and she might be addressed as Madam President one day. Out of our students that went into the Air Force, we have Cruz Vasquez and Zachary Line. We also had students go into the Army, which is Alicia Prattis, Bernarda Murray, and Amari Clark. Out of the Marines, we have Samuel Estridge, Roan Stevenson. The Navy, we have Deshaun Richardson. And then for law enforcement, we have Saka, who works for the Holly Springs Police Department, and also Gillard, who works for the Raleigh Police Department. And finally, Master Sergeant Duke McDuffie went to the Air Force too. He graduated. And he went through the Air Force, and now he teaches us. So he's a great teacher, and he did 24 years of active duty. So that's all I have, and thank you for your time.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Cadet Commander Jerry Atsunku, and I'm very honored and grateful for this opportunity to represent our great Navy JROTC unit at this Wake County School Board meeting. We have great pride and confidence in the work our Carey unit has done. We placed in the top 4 for our Area 6 drill meet, academics, and athletics competition. Our Cyber Patriot team was platinum tier and first in Area 6. And we also finished 4th in our brain brawl competition. And we did outstanding on our area manager's inspection.
Outside of these statistics, we have seniors in our program that are pursuing careers in the military, receiving full-ride ROTC scholarships, and excelling in other undergraduate programs.
And with the foundation of leadership embedded within the core of this cadet-led program, I'm fully confident that with the skills of tact, organization, and command presence, that those skills will serve us very well wherever life takes us. I'm empowered to be an active member of my local community and to this great country. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Grace Ajimong, and tonight Cadet Chowder and I are going to talk a little about MLO's JROTC. JROTC has helped me in developing my leadership skills while instilling discipline, responsibility, and teamwork. It has also taught me how to be resourceful, accountable, and live my life with integrity. For the past 4 years, all of our seniors have committed to attend institutions of higher learning. The main reason is because our instructors consistently talk about improving themselves through education. This year, we have 2 students accepted to Honors College at North Carolina A&T and UNC Charlotte. One has also been awarded and accepted a 4-year ROTC scholarship to attend North Carolina State University.
We have a very active program both in the school building and in the community, from supporting Miracle League of the Triangle to presenting the colors for the Department of Transportation Summit with the Governor. We've also been active and successful with our extracurricular activities. We qualified to compete nationally with our fitness team, armed and unarmed drill teams, the Leadership Bowl, and our Academic Bowl team. The growth, though, is not in the competing, but in the interactions with other schools, colleges, and university recruiters at those events. One of the most fun parts of JROTC is the chance that I get to go and explore outside of my daily life. Just 2 weeks ago, our drill and fitness teams traveled to Daytona Beach, Florida, to compete at the National Drill and Fitness Team Championships. We placed third for color guard and second for the mixed team beach run. There, we were able to talk to new people and learn about different aspects of life and pathways for our future. Last year, I attended the JROTC Academic Bowl Nationals, where I met a lot of cadets from around the country and talked with them about their lives and programs. We bonded over similar interests, and I still talk to them to this day. Essentially, JROTC has allowed me to grow in every aspect as a leader, friend, student, teacher, and teammate.
We also actively recruit for our JROTC by having our students go to middle schools and talk about frequently asked questions of the program. The main thing we and our instructors stress is that we are not a recruiting tool for the military and that there is no military commitment upon joining the program. My senior year has been very eventful, to say the least, with being involved in many extracurricular activities and the stress of family. Life has taken its toll on me. I do not think I would have made it through my final year of high school without JROTC and my Army instructors. They guided me through my entire college application process and gave me ample scholarship opportunities to apply for, many of which I received.
Lastly, the JROTC program is like a second family. We depend on each other for guidance, tutoring, and just to be a listening ear. Leading your peers is hard, but those who have obtained part-time jobs have noticed how the leadership lessons in JROTC have helped them outwork. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hafey, Superintendent Moore, members of the board. My name is Justin Taylor. I am a cadet lieutenant colonel and recently appointed Wildcat Battalion commander. Millbrook JROTC provides a unique opportunity for students to lead and learn outside of the standard curriculum. We have cadets that range from IB and AP students to varsity athletes to cadets who excel in all of the events and extracurriculars that we hold as a program. Our cadet seniors are competent public speakers. They are learned leaders who are not afraid to stand up when asked. They are trained to manage failure with lessons learned and victory with humility. Millbrook JROTC cadets are some of the hardest workers we have at Millbrook. Academically, our seniors who stay in the program are some of the top performers in their in the school. They are the ones that our principal can count on to represent not just us as a battalion, but the school, the district, and the U.S. Army in events that we hold and outside of school. Our mission is to make cadets better citizens, and we take this very seriously. This year, we have 17 seniors graduating. Among those, we have 6 joining the active military. We have 1 going to prep school for a military academy. 4 cadets are going to college and joining a university ROTC program. 4 cadets are going to college only. 3 are joining the workforce. And 11 total scholarships have been given out to these seniors due to JROTC involvement, commitment to a service branch, or a university ROTC program. A program of note is our Radar program. It is the most physically challenging program we have at Millbrook, and it is the only program in the district to qualify and compete in a 13-state Best of the Best competition and qualify for nationals in November at Fort Knox, Kentucky. With our 96 cadets, we're one of the most involved and trusted programs in the entire school. We are truly developing tomorrow's leaders while meeting our mission of making every cadet a better citizen. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cadet Staff Sergeant Arshayla Bullock. Sanderson High School Air Force JROTC NC 939 is comprised of 110 active and reserve cadets from grades 9 through 12. During school year 22-23, NC 939 accomplished over 22 color guard events honoring our nation's colors to local and national organizations, which included the Raleigh Post 1 Veterans Organization, the City of Knightdale, the North Carolina Electric Cooperative General Assembly, and the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Cadets also successfully conducted our annual coat drive in support of WREL's Coats for Kids drive and a book drive in support of Wake County's Wake Up and Read campaign. Furthermore, cadets independently raised over $18,000 to support events such as our annual military ball, in which NC 939 just celebrated its 30th birthday. Finally, to raise awareness for our program and to continue to grow and develop the next generation of leaders, NC 939 created an awareness presentation team whose mission is to bring awareness of JROTC to middle schools. This year's focus was on Sanderson's feeder schools. This initiative has been deemed successful as early numbers have indicated a 75% increase in ninth grade participation in JROTC for the school year 23-24. We also planted early seeds in the elementary schools as NC 939 taught students from York Elementary how to honor the nation's colors through their own flag detail initiative. Last but certainly not least, although NC 939 may be losing 14 senior cadets, the program has proved to be a successful stepping stone into post-high school life. This year, one of our cadets received one of the Air Force JROTC J100 scholarships, which allowed him to attend the Citadel. We also have cadets that are committed to four-year institutions and entering the military. NC 939 has been at hard work and will continue to develop citizens of character. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Battalion Commander Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Jackson Crank. I will be discussing three major accomplishments in the school year 2022 to 2023 for the Wake Forest High School Army JROTC Battalion. I will begin with our long-term service learning project that was completed last week. Each year, we invite 10 local high schools to bring special needs students to North Wake Baseball Field in Wake Forest for an opportunity to play t-ball against other schools. Cheerleaders, administrators, and Wooly Bull from the Durham Bulls cheered while varsity baseball and softball players from each school assisted the special needs students in celebrating the opportunity to represent their school in this friendly contest. We are proud to announce that this was the 12th year in holding Field of Dreams. Next year, due to continued growth and popularity, we will be inviting all Wake County JROTC programs to join us in forming a joint venture by making this an annual part of their service learning experience as well. The second major accomplishment for our school was an increase in the battalion grade average for all courses taken by cadets when looking at the third quarter. Our cadets rallied and increased our average by approximately 4.5 points as a group. This places us at an overall GPA of 82.46%. Our final accomplishment was the successful completion of the mandatory inspection that is administered every 3 years by Fort Bragg's ROTC Brigade, also known as the JROTC Program for Accreditation, or JPA. The previous JPA was given in 2017. The latest JPA was delayed several times due to COVID-19. Wake Forest received a 98.3% and retained the highest available recognition known as the Gold Star Unit of Distinction. Thank you for your time and consideration in listening to my presentation.
Each of these students is recognized as a leader in their school and in their community. They are shining examples of how academic programming, such as what is offered by our JROTC programs, is foundational to the attainment of lifelong skills. Thank you for allowing them to speak tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Glendinning, and thank you to our cadets, and thank you especially to their teachers and commanders who take so much time to nurture and foster these programs. And I'm going to turn it over quickly to Superintendent Moore, who oversaw an ROTC program, because I don't have any, and everything I learned was from attending the Navy Ball with Mr. Swanson, who graciously invited me.
I will just say that if I could figure out a way to have an ROTC program at every high school, I would. We've been banging on that door for a long time, and we are actually seeing, in some cases, programs closing across this country. So I consider ourselves fortunate to have been able to maintain the ones we have. We expanded by some a few years ago, and we continue to ask every year to see if there's a way. There's a really long waiting list. But these programs clearly connect our students to their schools and communities, to the values that we hold as an American people, and they benefit their schools, their communities, and all of us. So I look forward to staff continuing to bang on that door and see if we can't get some more.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. We now move on to public comment. Speakers commenting on items on the night's agenda will be heard before speakers commenting on other topics. All other speakers will be heard in order of sign-up. If the public comment portion of the agenda exceeds 30 minutes, board policy states that the board chair reserves the right to conduct other board business before inviting the remaining speakers to the podium. Members of the public are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel and individual student matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for public comment settings. Those offering comments to the board, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern. Concerns are related to personnel issues or student matters. Individual student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS, personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. During public comment, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. A green light will illuminate at the podium when you begin. A yellow light will light up along with an audio tone when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time, and a red light and an audible tone will signal when your time is up and the next speaker will be called to the podium. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, speakers are encouraged to address their comments to the Board of Education and refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time, and any materials you wish to share with the board should be handed to our board attorney either before or after your comments. We have 5 speakers for today. Our first speaker is Becky Lou Hobbs, followed by Julie Page.
Hi, I'm Becky Lou Hobbs, Wake County resident and concerned mom. Concerned because the board has allowed vulgar, age-inappropriate, and obscene materials in the classroom, and concerned because of policies that looks like are going to be violating First Amendment rights. So what are these policies? Policy 3200, which was mentioned tonight, as well as Policy 3210, inspection and objection to instructional material. Both of these policies use the term pervasively vulgar, which was mentioned earlier tonight, yet neither policy define what that means. So according to the dictionary, pervasive means permeating, to be prevalent throughout. And then synonyms for vulgarity include obscenity, profanity, and lewdness. In other words, pervasively vulgar is permeating or prevalent profanity, obscenity, or lewdness. Which is also interesting that I saw a news report from Board Attorney Blumberg stated that there's no law that defines the term, but then it's also quoted as saying that pervasively vulgar is repeated vulgarity throughout a material. Well, then that brings what's going on the past few years. Many parents, grandparents, concerned citizens have read from Lawn Boy, Jack of Hearts, The True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. There are many, many more. Books that pervasively depict sexual acts by children. Books that instruct children in sexual manners. Any of this material, if it had been in the workplace, would be deemed as sexual harassment. So why has this board continued to allow children to have access to this material? And since the board is concerned about legal definitions, this policy also cites as a legal reference the American Library Association. So what local, state, or federal authority has this association been granted the authority to develop laws? They don't have any authority to make laws. Any organization, such as the ALA, the NEA, the NCAE, that supports allowing children to access sexually explicit, pervasively vulgar materials, shouldn't be recognized in any capacity, legal or professional. And then there's Policy 3210 regarding inspection and objection to instructional material. It places a 2-year moratorium on filing grievances, limiting the First Amendment rights of parents. The right to speak out against materials that parents know is harmful to their children. In other words, my right to redress a grievance is dictated by somebody else if they filed one. Both these policies have major flaws that need to be rewritten. Materials with sexually explicit, in other words, pervasively vulgar material should not be allowed accessible by children. And these policies need to be backed by a board that will act to protect our children. Please send these policies back to the committees. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Julie Page, followed by Brooke Weiss.
Becky's taller than me. Hello. I will begin by helping the superintendent, the board, and especially the board attorney with the rewriting of policy 3200 on books in schools. Apparently, y'all can't seem to figure out what pervasively vulgar means. Is it the pervasive part, or is it the vulgar part? If you can't determine what it actually is, then change the language. How about the better word here is obscene, of which there are clear definitions in federal and state laws. North Carolina Statute 14-190.1, obscene material is any material that describes sexual conduct in an offensive way, appeals to an inappropriate interest in sex, and lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Now, if you need a definition of sexual conduct, it defines that for you too. Number one, vaginal, anal, or oral intercourse, normal or perverted. 2, masturbation, excretory functions, or lewd exhibition of uncovered genitals. 3, an act that depicts torture, physical restraint, or flagellation of or by a nude person, person in undergarments, or person in bizarre costume. This law also tells you how to judge obscenity when it comes to minors under 18 years of age, with reference to children, if the material or dissemination is directed to children. Aren't K through 12 schools in Wake County Public School System directed to children? Is that not something that we can all agree on? The United States Department of Justice also clearly states that obscenity is not protected by the First Amendment rights to free speech, especially when it comes to minors. Any reference to First Amendment rights should be removed, as it does not apply here. Any reference to the Library Bill of Rights from the Special Interest American Library Association should be removed, as it is not a legal authority. Your own school policies, 4309, 3005, and 3012 on student and professional conduct prohibit the use of language, whether oral or written, that is obscene, profane, offensive, lewd, vulgar, demeaning, and pornographic. Violations of that can result in a student being suspended or an employee being terminated. Did you know that the Wake County Detention Center has a policy on books given to inmates? They cannot contain images or content that is excessively violent, profane, pornographic, or obscene. They told me that the material has to be wholesome. Porn is not allowed for adults, but it's okay for kids. It's outrageous.
Our next speaker is Brooke Weiss, followed by Lana Witt.
Good evening. My name is Brooke Weiss. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I am also a concerned parent to find out that sexually explicit material is in Wake County schools. I am glad and grateful to hear that you're throwing this back to committee and going to look at it some more. Let me help you understand what pervasively vulgar means. It means that if the content of the book were put up on a movie screen and it received a rated PG-13 or an NC-17 or a rated R, that it should not be in the school libraries. That doesn't mean that you're banning books. It means that you're insisting on age-appropriate material in an educational setting. You're not banning books because if a parent chooses to allow their child access to those materials, they can still go buy the books on Amazon, go to a public library, or go to Barnes & Noble. The idea that these books are inclusive and that every student should be able to see themselves in these books is just not fair. Just because one child may be broken doesn't mean that you break the rest of the children in the environment. I can tell you, as a victim of sexual abuse, I was abused for years when I was a child. reading a book like that or having access to a book like that would have been traumatic for me. It's traumatic for me as an adult just to review some of the books that I have to look at that are in the school systems now. So I'm glad that you're going to look at it again. I hope that you will make responsible decisions as to what you allow the children in your system to be exposed to. Because it's on you. It's on you to make the decisions. You've decided that parents aren't able to make the decisions. When we send our children to school, we're not relinquishing our rights as parents, and we don't co-parent with the government. We do not want our children reading stuff like that. Sexualizing children is damaging to their brains. It's damaging to their emotional development. Their little brains are not ready and capable to handle mature topics like that, and it should be up to a parent to decide when topics like that, when their children are exposed to topics like that. So I hope that you very carefully consider what you will continue to allow in your libraries, in your classrooms, in the curriculum, because it's a very important decision. Children's mental health is at risk. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Our next speaker is Lana Witt, followed by Nhan Tran.
Good evening, board members. As a resident and tax-paying family, thank you for the public service you offer Wake County Public School students and the families here. At a historic time when inflation impacts individuals and families, as taxpayers throughout Wake County, what an incredible opportunity to look at budget funds directed by this board. Consistently, the narrative is fully fund the public schools. Would you agree? My question remains, as a prior educator who set a department budget, what amount of money is enough money to, quote, fully fund public education? Is it that our public schools aren't fully funded? Or is it that decision makers direct funds away from basic needs for students, away from excellence in reading, writing, and math skills, away from bus driver, cafeteria worker, and educator salaries, and towards six-figure salaries for over 100 administrators who don't spend instructional time, bus driving time, or food preparation time? What percentage of the budget funds things outside the scope of basic needs? Do student and educator retention rates reflect and support how you as decision makers are directing these funds? By the presence of educators here, topics of poor operations of bathrooms and classrooms, bus driver and educator salaries the previous few months, I'd say there's high concern for how it's being directed. Would you agree? Retention rates for both students and educators are low, while Wake County population continues to increase. Why? Does the majority of the community share satisfaction with outcomes and how our taxpayer dollars are being spent? January 23rd through the 29th, 2022, Governor Cooper declared North Carolina School Choice Week, because even he sees increasing disinterest in public schools and the value of providing every family school choice information to bring competition and encourage excellence. When my kids want more without taking care of what they actually have, is it wise for my husband and I to move money away from one area of basic need to an area that's not being well used? In this time of historic inflation, my request of this board and our county commission is audit every area of increased spending and put it towards students, educators, bus drivers, and cafeteria workers.
Our next speaker is Nan Tran.
Good evening. My name is Nan Tran, and I'm from Wakefield High School. Today I'm actually also going to talk about AAPI month and more specifically the role I play in the community. And today I'm actually here to ask you for your help and your support. But first I want to give you some context. So I started the Asian Culture Club at Wakefield this year for the first time, and my friends and I had the goal of not only educating those who are interested in Asian culture, but to also educate ourselves. And I must say we did learn a lot through the experience. Within our first year, we gained over 50 members instantly and hopefully plan on gaining more for the years to come. What interested us the most was the diversity that made up our club members. We were incredibly happy to see that the club didn't just consist of Asian Americans, but it was even able to reach out to those who aren't of Asian heritage. Seeing the diversity in the members proved to me that people who don't share the same heritage or the same race could still come together and share the same interests and curiosities. Everyone ended up having so much fun learning about different Asian cultures. Seeing everyone come together with one goal inspired me. It inspired me to go bigger. I didn't want to just educate this time, though. I wanted to focus on the connection aspect, which brings us to my organization. GAAC, or the Guild of Asian American Communities, is an initiative that we started in order to connect with different Asian American clubs around Wake County. Our goal is to create a network that connects people, ideas, and cultures across the state in order to foster greater growth and development within our diverse communities. We have been able to build out our organization and expand to a few schools beside my own, and we hope to keep on expanding more with your support. We've already done, on the sheet that I've handed in, there's a list of like what we plan on doing and what we've already done, and so far, even though we are small, we do have big goals and we do have big dreams for change to society, and we really want to be a part of that. So, hopefully through these efforts, we can gain more recognition for Asian American communities and cultures, and that our goal of connectivity can come to be with the assistance and support from the community itself. Again, if you have any more information, it is on the sheet, and contact info is also on there. But yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you. This concludes public comment. We now turn it over to Superintendent Moore to update the works with updates from our work session.
Good evening again. The board covered 3 items during today's work session earlier this afternoon. The first item the board will see later this evening in the work of the strategic plan with an update after a number of sessions with board feedback and some wordsmithing to create the final draft of the goals and aims in the strategic plan that we will be requesting for board approval this evening. The second item on the work session agenda was a proposal that the board will also see later this evening on action to increase meal prices for lunch in elementary school from $3 to $3.25, and in middle and high schools from $3.25 to $3.50. It is, in the work session today, we discussed the federal child nutrition program, the very stringent requirements for both the food that is served and how the funds are used and what is required to get reimbursement from the federal government for free and reduced price lunches, and then the revenue that's raised from either full price lunches or a la carte items. The increase in the lunch prices at elementary and middle school of a quarter those funds will be used to support increased salaries and benefits for staff, as CNS is an enterprise fund, and the salaries are paid out of the income that is received from the lunches. Those funds will also be used, the increase from the funds will also be used to handle increased supply costs and resources as their costs are going up as well. The board will be considering that increase later this evening as part of an action item. Item number 3 that was covered in the work session today was year 2 of a 2-year plan, the CTE, Career Technical Education Local Plan. It is a 2-year plan. The board heard updates in work session for year 2 of that plan. Year 2 of that plan will come before the board for approval on June 6th. And those were the items in work session today.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. We'll now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda noting that our items, item E under facilities, as well as item A under policy 3200 are going to be pulled from action. And again, I'll note that this will not be reflected on Assembly. So we will have to go back to consent agenda to do that. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended at this time?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Johnson-Hostler, a second from Vice Chair Haggerty. Any comments, questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, we now move on to our action items. First, coming out of the Office of the Chief of Staff, Dr. Robinson, presenting the strategic plan for final approval.
Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Haggerty, esteemed board members, Superintendent Moore. Tonight we bring to you the final draft of our strategic plan. This draft includes the spelling out of the 4 C's: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, which was recommended during your work session earlier today. This final draft also includes the addition of goals, aims to the mission, vision, core values, and strategic priorities that you approved last fall. This plan focuses on the excellence and equity for all Wake County Public School System students, staff, and learning communities. Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Haggerty, and esteemed board members, this evening we ask for your approval of the Wake County Public School System strategic plan.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Is there a motion to approve the Wake County strategic plan?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Waters, a second from Mr. Swanson. Is there any comments or discussion at this time? Or questions? Ms. Edmonds?
I just want to thank you and your staff, all the staff involved, as we workshopped this and met about it over many months, including the previous board before, this board were sworn in late last year. So thank you. It's been a ton of time and thoughtful input, and it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Haggerty?
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. I want to say how just pleased and satisfied I am with this product that's being presented today. I know that it's taken months of hard work by a team of people working in many different disciplines to pull this together. But not that anyone gets emotional about a strategic plan, right? But I will tell you, one of the things that as we do this work, where board members, I know, run into frustration, is when they feel they're not making an impact, or they feel that they're not being heard. And as I look at this document, I can see very specific contributions from all of my colleagues around the table. I know that not everybody got every change that they were looking for, but I see very specific comments as I look through here. I see the change from recruit, hire, and retain diverse instructional staff to add non-instructional, which was a priority. I see including develop, because it's not just hiring a diverse staff, but providing opportunities for advancement and promotion. As you know, I've been harping on sustainability since the beginning of this process. I'm glad to see that included, but it's good to see comments that my colleagues have made around the table in the different work groups all submitted into this. So I want to thank you on behalf of the board, and I want to thank all of my colleagues for all of the work it's taken to read through all of this material, consider it thoughtfully, and provide your feedback into a vision for the district going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Waters?
I don't know what I could add to Vice Chair Haggerty's comments or Ms. Edmonds, but I do echo the great sense of appreciation for the thoughtfulness of all involved in your leadership to get this document that I feel will really help us to operationalize so many things that are important. And I appreciate being able to see its impact and its ability to create great outcomes for all of our students. And so thank you for that work, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson-Hostler?
I think I spoke to this at the end of work session, but absolutely, I echo my colleagues' sentiments. Thank you for your leadership. Also, it's hard to ensure that you're meeting and making sure every board member is heard. And so I just echo those sentiments that sometimes that meant you had to call some of us multiple times. And I appreciate that level of commitment and conveying that back to the team and always being very clear that there were multiple people and hands in this. I thought we laid a great foundation. The last strategic plan, and what we all complained about was there were not clear measures that were able to be articulated back to the board so that we could actually follow along with the work that our staff and students were achieving. And so I would say aims is a word I had never used, but I feel like you gave us the tools that no matter what happens, that this board can use that as a real metrics for the growth and change in Wake County Public Schools, and also accountability. So thank you, and everyone who touched that, and also for all the people who took notes and heard the feedback so that it can be reflected in a document that I truly do agree with Vice Chair Haggerty that feels reflective of each of our board members and our comments. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Caulfield?
I want to second, third, and fourth, all the thank yous. I know that was a lot of work. That was long before some of the board members here, and for answering the very many questions that we all gave you over and over. I think it was really great for maybe the public to even know that if they weren't paying attention in prior meetings, we actually did the breakout sessions. And it is often very hard to have open conversation, as we all have been pointed out, like with all the meetings and agendas and everything. I think that really led to a lot of good conversation, and then seeing what was up on there on the board from the previous group to come in, and it really just helped everybody kind of collaborate and put it all together into something that made sense. So I couldn't imagine the work that it was on your end, so thank you for that. And I look forward to the how, which is what we talked about, knowing the how and what comes afterwards. So this is the first step of getting that all in place. So thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Further comments, questions? Dr. Ng?
Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for all that you have done, and all the crew that works with you. It is a daunting task to try to put everything together, all the ideas that we have come to you with, and so I appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that you've listened to our concerns about making sure that our population that have been not paid much attention is represented in this document. So, and especially with reaching out to the community to get feedback, I think that's going to be an important piece moving forward.
Thank you.
And I know we're up here thanking Dr. Robinson, but I do want to make it clear that you had a whole team behind you doing
That's
this.
right.
And I know
That's
we
right.
have in here tonight, Dr. McMillan, who made sure that our accountability measures, that we're not creating anything new, but we're using what we have. I think that's very important to our staff and making sure that we're not giving additional work to them. I'm sure Dr. Alfred Keith, yes, the entire superintendent's leadership team, and then the feedback loops that we had, not just with board members, but I believe there was reach out to teachers and other folks. There was a whole...
So Superintendent, Teacher Advisory Council,
board
students,
advisory councils.
everybody, many hands, many people.
Yes.
And so I thank you on behalf of all of them.
Yes.
So it wasn't me alone.
And as I don't want to say difficult, because this was good work and productive work as it was, the real work now begins with the approval of this and the accountability piece. And I appreciate what we saw in the work session of how that accountability model begins, starting, I believe, in October of this year. So I just want to say, we have this product, and now it's going to go out and live and breathe and exist in our school district, much like, as Ms. Johnson-Hostler said, our Vision 2020 did, with giving us the 4 Cs. And so just thank you to everybody who took the time to share and input and participate in this process.
But there's going to be one more thing that we're going to bring back to you.
There's one more thing.
We have to get a name.
A name. All right, well, name notwithstanding, the new strategic plan will now entertain. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you.
We now go into out of our academic advancement department. We have Drew Cook and Miss Joanne Honeycutt talking about our CTE advisor stipend, which was referenced in the work session. Ms. Honeycutt.
Thank you, Chairman Haffey, Board Member, Superintendent Moore. As I mentioned in the work session earlier today, we are coming to you requesting action to increase the stipends that we pay to staff members who serve as advisors for our career and technical education student organizations, affectionately called CTSOs. The Department of Public Instruction has allowed us to pay a stipend up to $500 until earlier this spring when they increased the amount to $1,000. They set the criteria. Our teachers have been well aware of that and have participated in the program to earn the stipend. We would like to give them the benefit of the increased amount.
Is there a motion to approve this advisor stipend increase? So moved. All right, we have a motion from Ms. Edmonds, a second from Ms. Caulfield. Any comments, questions? All right, I think we're ready. Yes, you got your hand up? No? Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't catch. All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you, Ms. Honeycutt.
Thank you.
We now move on to K-12 instructional supports, summer learning weekly perfect attendance bonus with Dr. Shanika Moore-Lawrence, Senior Director of K-12 instructional supports. Dr. Moore-Lawrence, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board Chair, Superintendent, and Board members. I stand before you with a request for action. Funded by PRC 176, the K-12 Instructional Support Summer Learning Weekly Perfect Attendance Bonus serves as a recruitment and retention strategy for staff working one of the 3 summer learning programs coordinated by K-12 Instructional Supports. Those programs are WAKE, We Accelerate Kids Every Day, for rising 3rd graders, Navigating New Environments for rising 4th and 5th grade multilingual learners, and On the Rise for rising 6th and 9th graders. This structure will provide a $200 per week bonus for all certified and instructional staff for a maximum of $1,000 for the full summer program. This bonus structure acknowledges the 5-week time commitment of staff, the novelty of the programming, and the allowance within the funding source of PRC 176. For the purpose of tracking the bonus eligibility, attendance structures will be utilized by each site administrator to monitor and report attendance. Are there any questions or comments?
All right. Is there a motion to approve the perfect attendance bonus at this time?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waters and a second from, I think, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Questions at this time for Dr. Moore-Lawrence? All right. Well, we're very thankful to everyone that steps up to help administer these programs and help our students at this time. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. For those following along, we are going into the consent agenda, and we're going to start under facilities and look at meal prices for the 2023-2024 school year. Again, this will be moved later. This was moved from consent to action. And so we will have Ms. Paula DeLuca and Mr. Mark Strickland presenting. And again, this is reflecting what we heard in the work session.
Good evening, Board Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. At today's work session, Child Nutrition Services presented a recommendation for a meal price increase of 25 cents for paid meals for the coming school year. and discussion followed to answer any questions or any other items related that you felt important to explore. I am here tonight to request the board's approval to increase the meal price 25 cents for elementary school students from $3 to $3.25, and middle and high school students from $3.25 to $3.50. Your consideration is appreciated, and I welcome questions.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the meal prices for the 2023-2024 school year?
That is correct.
So
All right. Is there a second? Second. All right. We have a motion by Vice Chair Haggerty, a second from Dr. Ng. Questions, comments, board members? Mr. Hershey.
Can you go back over the, is it CEP? The CEP that was discussed, explain it again and where we are in that process and how that impacts some of our schools and the cost overall?
I'd be happy to. So the community eligibility provision, also known as CEP, provides school systems the opportunity to provide free meals to all students in a school or in a group of schools that meet a percentage qualifier of enrollment. The percentage qualifier is a composite of students that have been directly certified for food stamps, TANF, or are categorically eligible as foster students, migrant, homeless, and runaway. When you achieve an approximate 62.5% of your enrollment with students qualifying based on those categories, we can then qualify the school as a community eligibility provision school. In so doing, we can claim all of the meals that we serve to students, but that would be one lunch, one breakfast per day per student, for at the free reimbursement rate, which is the highest rate of reimbursement that we can receive. We also have the ability to qualify schools as low as 40%, again, meeting that set of qualifiers. However, if all of the schools that you select to participate in CEP, say there's some that are grouped at 100%, or I should say the 62.5%, they would get reimbursed at the all-free rate. Any individual school not part of that group or another group of schools you decide to group together that is less than 62.5%, we would receive a partial reimbursement at that higher free rate, with the remaining meals reimbursed at the lowest rate, which is the paid reimbursement rate. It's about 30 to 35 cents per meal. If we were to move in that direction, as the school food authority or enterprise, as you know, Child Nutrition Services to be, we cannot absorb the additional cost to support the meals that don't qualify at that higher free rate. So there would need to be a fund source provided to Child Nutrition Services to offset that cost. At this time, I know that we have a group of schools that we can qualify at the 100% reimbursement. It's taken us some time to get here. Currently, we have 7 schools on CEP. This is our first year participating. Once a school or group of schools is on CEP, they can receive the free meals for 4 years based on that qualifying status as a school or group. And then at the end of 4 years, we can enter into a 5th-year grace period by petitioning the Department of Public Instruction for the additional year, during which time we would try to encourage families to apply for food stamps or TANF to elevate the percent that qualify, which hopefully would then further qualify the school in that next stage.
When you say we would need funding, a new fund source, how much are you talking about?
It would depend on the schools.
And I believe we're going to have a CEP presentation coming, so we do.
Well, I got it. Sort of what I'm getting at is, and I'll just ask this question, is this something that we need to vote on tonight? Or is it something that can be delayed when we get that presentation? I don't know if it impacts the cost or anything in this program, so I'm just curious about the timing of this.
So let me just see what I understand what he's asking. The question that he's asking is, would the potential to identify more CEP schools negate or change the recommendation of needing to increase meal prices by 25 cents for lunch at elementary, middle, and high school in order to cover the revenue need?
I would have to say the answer to that is no, and it's for this very reason. The schools that qualify for CEP have a large percentage of students that already would be receiving a free meal, and we're already being reimbursed at that high rate. So if you consider that, what I would be looking at now is 15 schools possibly, if we can make that happen, that leaves almost 185 schools yet to still have some type of support on the paid meal.
So just one last, my only concern is, as we talked about in the work session, are there students and families that don't quite qualify? And I would appreciate it if we would take the lead as a county and look at ways to help those families that are, and estimate some percentage or pick some percentage that don't qualify, so we aren't putting the cost on them, and the families that can't afford it, we find local dollars for them, and the families that can't afford it, that are able to afford it, they will help us in achieve the income that we need. But I feel very strongly that we've got to do something in that gray area with families to not put it on them that don't qualify.
We can work with staff to see if there's a business case for next year's budget to look at something like that as well.
Yeah.
Ms. Waters.
I appreciate Mr. Hershey's advocacy and speaking for members of our community who are going to be impacted and who are already facing economic challenges. There tends to be a disparate impact on certain communities, and so it's never an easy decision when we try to balance our students' needs and the realities of the different places that they come to us from with business needs, but always wanting to do what is best for the children in our building and understanding that children face hunger in this country, and that's a reality that we live with.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Ms. Caulfield.
I just wanted to clarify from our work session earlier, is the need for the extra money that we're asking for in the lunch funds, that's $6 million and $3.8 million, correct? Is that if I'm reading that right, is that our ask? Like it says the supply chain assistance is $6 million. Are we asking for $6 million more?
No.
Or that's just how much we normally need?
We started out with an approximate $6.7 million shortfall, and to offset that, we've tried to come up with some creative ways of addressing it for the coming year. So we are carrying over $3.1 million of the supply chain assistance funds, which provides a net result of $3.6 million. And then we've also taken some other steps. We've reduced some school-based positions that were vacant, holding that over. That will provide some benefit for us. And the net result of the meal price increase is actually $800,000. So it's significant for us because even that does not do enough to get us to the break even. In order to get to a break even, we will have to tap into our net excess funds in order to shore up our potential losses. Again, this is all based on a projected budget. As I mentioned earlier, I can't predict how many meals we'll serve and any shifts that could occur in supply chain on cost increases.
And I know you spoke earlier about the enterprise funds, but can we also get this from local funds to supplement what we need and the increases that we're seeing rather than impact the families? I'm just concerned because there are families out there that are working 2 jobs, 2 parents, and every little bit counts. So it may seem like a little bit, but I feel like it's the little guy who keeps getting kind of the brunt of it. And I'm just wondering, is that some place that we can pull from local, or is that number too large?
Let me answer that. So just to recap, it's a $6.7 million shortfall minimum. It'll probably be more. $3.1 million is coming from some funds that are able to carry over. There is a reduction of school-based positions that has occurred to take a portion of that. There is revenue that is anticipated from the 25% lunch price increase. That revenue is a little shy of $1 million. That's what that represents. And then there are some additional funds that are available that will need to be tapped into. Knowing that that likely doesn't cover it, the district will have to find funds to support whatever that shortfall is, because they've got to zero out, so to speak, and they're not allowed to run a deficit. And so the short answer is yes, we can find local funds to do it at the expense of something else. And that will be something that staff will look into and bring back to the board as part of a potentially either the final budget resolution or the time when the funds are needed for CNS.
Mr. Haggerty, and then Mr. Swanson, and then Dr. Ng.
Thank you, Haffey. And I guess that last point gets to a question that's come up with our budget. And as I talk to county commissioners, they ask, we talk about a living wage and supporting all of our workers, and predominantly, our bus drivers, but our child nutrition workers are among some of our lowest paid employees. And they ask sometimes about full funding of the budget and what that would mean. And they bring up the point, if our CNS workers are paid for just out of these enterprise funds, how can funding the budget, the local budget, help us? And this is one of those examples where if we were to receive the full ask, I think some of those dollars in that pot would ultimately go to this shortfall, if that's correct, or no?
I think we have more options, is the answer, is, fully funding the superintendent and now board's proposed budget allows the reconciliation when it happens on the other end of what the legislature does to have more options for how to do that. Less than our ask or not raising meal prices, both of those require that the staff go back to look at the requests that are on the table and figure out where to make reductions. And a reminder that over 50% of the budget request is squarely tied to salary and compensation. More than that if you look at benefits as well that are required. And I think, as I said in my summary earlier, the revenue shortfall that's being made up, including the 25 cents, is offsetting costs for supporting increased salaries for all CNS workers, and the fact that resources, supplies, et cetera, have gone up as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore.
Mr. Nieder.
And if I could just clarify too, and now the board's proposed budget, the funding that Superintendent Moore just spoke to for increase in compensation does not include compensation for grant-funded employees, other federally funded employees, or enterprise-funded employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's not within the $56.8 million.
Thank you, Mr. Nieder. So I guess where this leaves me as we talk about this issue is, I am concerned about our CNS workers and the wages that they're paid and the wages that we can pay them. And even though we also, we have the competing needs of the families, because of this crazy system that we have, that the pay has to come through the revenues that come from your office, Mr. Luca, I know that limits our options. So that's really why I put forward the motion for the increase, because I think we have to get to 17 to 18. I think we have to get to a higher wage than even what is proposed. But I know that we can't do this yet without this step. And I guess my direction and what I would ask the board to consider is, just like Mr. Hershey had brought up some other streams, are there other sources of revenue within the enterprise program that we can just aggressively market and tap? When you mention revenue from snacks, revenue from catering, and I think about our athletic events, I think about school social events, PTA meetings, BAC meetings, how many parents that are out there, families that might be buying supplies, booster clubs that might be buying outside of your office, if any of those sales could be directed, and then somehow just increase that pool of money so it's not falling just on student meals to cover this. I'd just like you to investigate that as an option. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Ng?
I mentioned about the butterfly effect. This is unfortunately one of those situations where it is a, downstream effects on our society, and I tend to agree, with Mr. Hegarty. I mean, we have to make hard decisions, and knowing that the funds to fund the salaries of CNS comes from this, or partly from this, that this is one piece of the solution to help increasing the salary. And I just had to remember a few weeks ago when those members from the CNS came to speak to us. I mean, it was heart-wrenching to hear their stories, and I can't get it out of my head. So what do we do about it? We have to do something. So, thanks.
Superintendent Moore, I think we heard some agreement amongst board members to pursue additional revenue streams for future budgets. And I know your tenure here is almost at a close, but at the same time, we don't direct your staff what to do. That's your purview. So I think that we can do that, and I think we can all attest to the catering skills of WCPSS culinary, and certainly its affordability. So.
I would just say that there are things that I think we could look at for securing additional revenue. It remains to be seen what the impact of those efforts are, right? So we still end up at a point at the end of the next school year where we have to reconcile. So we'll have to do that no matter what sort of a decision the board makes this evening. But to me, that does sound like a future presentation in terms of options that are on the table. And I can think of some right now, but I won't say them out loud because people have a heart attack. Yeah, I do.
All right.
I'll share my thoughts on some of those items, but some of it also requires, I think that our schools are our greatest partners in this work as well. And so how we leverage the relationship we have with 198 schools is going to be really important, but we got to think about the capacity of what we have in our current CNS staff as well. So there's just a lot of moving parts to answering a question of how we might generate additional revenue. But I think we're more than happy to look into that and see what options are before us.
And I hate to talk about future budgets while we still have to reconcile the current one, but I do know, and not our friends at the County Commission have a strong interest in food security, and a huge part of that is the nutrition and food security of the children that are in our schools each and every day. So I think a future business case may be warranted for those revenue streams. Mr. Hershey?
Just last thing, when people kind of talk about, and we hear board comments about it, what does full funding look like? Full funding looks like free breakfast and lunch for all of our students, just to be clear.
That is a huge part of it, and again, just a small plug in case anybody with pull in Congress is listening. We would love to have that back for all of our students. That was a huge game changer for so many of them. At this time, are there any additional comments, questions, or concerns from board members? Yes?
And I apologize, y'all, because I don't mean to drag it out, but there is one other thing that did bother me that I do want to say. If we are looking to fund these positions, it really, and I know it's necessity, but the idea of having to eliminate positions to reconcile it just ought not to be the favored option, because when you eliminate positions, you're putting the same amount of work on fewer people to do it, and that means what's already hard work becomes even harder when it's spread over fewer people. And I know sometimes these choices are forced upon us, and they're not what you would like to do, but I think that's just even more reason why we need to look to see what we can do to help this program.
Ms. Johnson-Hustler?
I wasn't going to comment on that, but now I will. So I think the thing that I was going to say, I'll say what was in my head first, which is I know it's hard for human behavior to think past a dichotomy. Our inclination is black, white, left, right, one or the other. I don't generally, you all know, I live in the both and. I don't generally accept that you can't do both. It is just an acknowledgement that it will be difficult to do both. And so I guess my personal perspective is I don't think I'm at a place where I'm like, oh, well, we're going to be laying off all these CNS workers if we don't increase this 25 cent. Because at one time we're like, well, it's 25 cent. And at the same time we're like, we're going to be laying off staff. We heard the CNS workers. Those stories are true and stuck with us. But we also heard very clear that they're understaffed, that one person is covering 3 schools. So you're going to lay off staff and nobody's covering the schools. So I think for me, this just brings up a whole lot of unanswered questions. And I know nothing we do is simple. And you all heard me say this is not, again, squarely in the lap of our board. And to Ms. Mahaffey's point, she knows that I've talked to our members of Congress about the need to address this. And for a very long time, it's a platform of mine because it doesn't fit anything that's real in our world, and it just challenges boards and communities, again, who have some resources to do the impossible. And while we tend to believe it's impossible, it feels Herculean, and it is. But my vote to not raise it isn't a vote to lay off staff. It is a vote of confidence that, sorry, Mr. Nieder, that yes, I believe we can have larger conversations and push the envelope about where we are now. And so I just want to acknowledge to Ms. DeLuca, who I've worked closely with, and respect the work that you've done and the multiple ways that you've tried. Trust me, I know if anybody else does at this table to be creative to support our students and families. So I also want to hear people say this offer to increase isn't also about you or your office actually choosing one or the other either. So I just think it's important to note that I don't believe that's what you're saying, and it's certainly not what I'm saying with my vote.
If I may, I just have a point of clarification. We are not laying off staff. What we are doing is we are eliminating vacant positions to get us down to effectively a net zero rate of vacancy.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. DeLuca. And I just want to say, and I'm going to call on Mr. Swanson next, this is the conversation that happens, and it may look like we're grilling Ms. DeLuca, but really it's that time where we can, convene and talk on this topic, even though we just had it in the work session with our board members, and think out loud and point staff in other directions as well as we do come to a vote. Mr. Swanson?
Thank you. And thank you for the work that you do every day and your staff to ensure that our students have a full stomach. I know firsthand as a former teacher that students can't learn if they can't eat. And Ms. Johnson-Hustler, thank you for helping me articulate my words. I've been very quiet on this issue because I I understand, and I get there's a both and, but oftentimes we know that those who have can, and those who cannot suffer. And that's what I feel like in this particular case. Like, although a 25-cent increase may not be major to us, but to some families, it's a choice between light bill. It's a choice between a gas. So I get it, and I understand, and I want to thank the chair for pulling this from consent, and thank you for acknowledging that, because I struggled with this all week and trying to figure out what are some options, and I want to thank Mr. Strickland for calling me about this a little bit more to give me some more insight, but I still cannot with a good conscience vote to increase this, knowing that it's going to affect some families who are already barely surviving, and we have to do better. And if we really want to say that we are fully, supporting students, we have to put our dollar where our mouth is, and we are doing that. And when I say they, I mean those who have more decision-making power than we do. They have got to step up, and we have got to have a partnership instead of us being on opposite sides, because at the end of the day, our students suffer. Yeah. And at the end of the day, workers suffer. And so thank you. And my vote is not a vote against your work and your staff. It's just continuing the conversation. So thank you.
If I may, if it's okay, just to provide a comment, it's not our first choice to bring a meal price increase forward. It's a forced choice. And that's a result of how the structures are delivered to us from the federal government. Thank you for your understanding.
Ms. Edmonds?
So by my count, we have 3 people that have vocalized that they're not going to support the increase. What does it look like if we don't support it? What happens next?
But I think the superintendent articulated that it would just be that additional funding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, at the end that supplements the loss.
So I think there's a short game and a long game, right? And in the short term, there is an amount that is represented in revenue by the 25-cent increase that will have to be covered in addition to what we project to be a deficit that goes beyond the 25-cent increase. If you're playing that's the short game for me. The longer game really is about all the other dollars also that are no longer going to be available, that make the difference in requesting a local funding increase, for example, if we were to build that out as a budget case for next year, quite substantial. But the amount that it would take to raise prices in order to break even in the absence of other revenues is quite substantial also. And so there are not great choices before us with this. And I'll let Mr. Nieder maybe answer with more dollars and cents.
Add just a little bit, not necessarily with dollars, but as you've heard us talk about the budget reconciliation process, step back from the meal price for just a moment. Come right back to it. We need to wait and see what the county commissioners finalize and agree on as it relates to the final county appropriation for next year, whether it is equal to the board's request, more than or less than. We need to wait and see what the state legislature does with their budget and other legislation that can have budgetary implications, even though it's not budget legislation. Good example of that would be the Class 4 and Class 5, or Grade 4 and Grade 5 class size, for which, if that passes, we would require additional teachers without additional funding for those teachers. All those things have to come together into a budget reconciliation, and usually at the end of the day, we can't do all the things we intended to do. If the board were not to move forward in supporting this 25 cent per meal increase, that would put another $1 million on the table. That would be part of the reconciliation process of things, that funding that we need to identify that we don't have. And
the question before us is whether or not we're going to support this 25-cent increase. It's not
who is in favor of doing that, who likes increasing the meal cost. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't like at all the implication that anybody up here, none of us, wants to increase meal prices for families.
I don't think that was the implication. I think we all struggle with this, and I think we heard that, but...
and so I just need to know in the immediate, weeks to come, not a year from now in next year's budget proposal, what does that mean more immediately?
I think you reconcile at the end of the year, right?
That is correct.
And you cannot run a deficit.
That is correct.
So at the end of this year, if they're running a deficit, we have to figure out a way to cover it. At the end of next year, if they're running a deficit, we have to figure out how to cover it. And we can't use federal dollars for that. We have to use local dollars, I think, for that. So in the short, it doesn't look any different in a school or to students or to families. But there is a reconciliation that has to happen at the end of the fiscal year.
And as we heard in the work session, any community partners that want to donate to that deficit can reach out, and we would greatly appreciate it. At this time, are there any more board comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, and if we could call out just individually for the record to share your vote, and again, this is a vote for is not a vote in belief that this is a wonderful thing. It is just, it is what it is. No one likes doing this part. So I'm going to call out individual board members' names just because we can have it for the record. Mr. Hershey?
Aye.
Dr. Ng?
Aye.
Ms. Edmonds?
Aye.
Ms. Waters?
Nay.
Vice Chair Haggerty? Ms.
Nay.
Johnson-Hosler?
Jonathan's also taking notes.
Mr. Swanson?
Nay.
Ms. Caulfield?
Nay.
And I have a vote of aye, so the motion carries, but with direction to staff that we would like to see something come forward. Thank you, Ms. DeLuca, and thank you, board members, for a robust discussion.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we go through policy, and we go to policy 3200. Again, this is currently listed under consent agenda, but was pulled to action. And this is board policy 3200, selection of instructional materials for second reading. And everybody's here, so thank you. Mr. Cook.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, board members. Staff is presenting Board Policy 3200, selection of instructional materials for second read and seeking board approval. We're happy at this time to respond to any questions or hear board feedback.
All right, is there a motion either to approve or 3200? I know there were multiple comments made during the agenda approval. Thank you, Mr. Hershey. We have a motion to approve Board Policy 3200. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Swanson. All right, questions, comments, concerns at this time? Ms. Caulfield.
I just would really like us to, like I said before, earlier, I got a lot of feedback from teachers, even people who were not in my district, that did not really care for the way it was worded. They felt that if we made more of a statement in our policy, it kind of eliminated them having to answer to certain things like that. And it's really more about the language that's in 3200, not necessarily to not have 3200. So,
Ms. Caulfield, could you provide some specificity to the language that you're speaking of so that we know what you're talking about?
So specifically said to me was pervasively vulgar, and the, what was the other one? I think that was the word that was mostly opposed, was the pervasively vulgar. I'll have to go back and look at it.
And is there a suggestion for replacement?
The only replacement words that I heard from people were to explain it more. Instead of pervasively vulgar, they were saying was very vague. So either to be specific with what we mean by that, or to change it to words that involve obscene, or certain words like that, where it would be more descriptive.
Okay. And is that your suggestion?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Mr. Blumberg, can you explain, we talked in the policy about pervasively vulgar and the vagueness of it. Can you speak more to the why and
Sure, I'd like to.
where it comes from?
So pervasively vulgar initially came from the leading Supreme Court decision regarding sort of a book challenge. It's the PICO case. And both the parties in the case agreed that a school board would have the authority to be able to remove an item, a material that was pervasively vulgar. So this language comes directly out of the United States Supreme Court. That language was then incorporated into North Carolina statute. So North Carolina law specifically lists grounds on which a school system, a school board, which is the ultimate authority on book challenges, can decide whether to remove a material. It's educationally unsuitable, it's inappropriate for the maturity of particular students, and pervasively vulgar. And so that's where the language comes from. There is not a North Carolina Supreme Court or federal case that covers our area that specifically defines it. But that said, the district has been through book challenges where the language has been applied by school committees, by a central office committee, and by the board in applying that to be able to make decisions on whether to remove materials or not. This particular policy, 3200, really goes to book selection, and it's taking that same standard that would be used in a book challenge and asking staff when selecting materials to use that same lens about whether the material passes that sort of test, and if it is pervasively vulgar, then the idea is that book wouldn't be selected. It wouldn't be added to the materials to start with. So that's sort of where it originated, that language, why it is suggested to be in policy, so that you hug the North Carolina law that comes from the United States Supreme Court. There are terms that are challenging to define. I would add that to move to obscenity, that's a very different standard. That's the criminal law standard for if there is material like at a video place that is obscene. That's a different, in fact, a higher standard, and it would involve then potential criminal behavior. So this is the language that's used specifically for book challenges that the North Carolina General Assembly and the United States Supreme Court have used. So that's where it comes from.
Thank you, Mr. Blumberg.
Comment? So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I understand what you're saying. I think the conversation about 3200 also we know that 3210 is following right behind it and how you implement it. And I think the fact that it was brought to the table that we would limit people being able to, and this was also not consistent across Wake County, as we did discuss, that it would be by school. So if we're going to limit them to a 2-year after some committee has reviewed it, I think having the language of what is acceptable and not. I mean, we're talking about this policy because there are a lot of people that are coming forward that are talking about it. I mean, I'm assuming that this is why it came to policy in the policy committee in the first place. So there's a lot of people that have been talking about it for a couple of years now. This is not something that just came up. So my recommendation, or what I was hoping for, is that we would have a policy that was a little bit more specific in things that were acceptable and not acceptable to Wake County. I do understand we need to follow along with the state law and everything, but I would hope that we would have a little bit more description as to what is acceptable and what's not. I mean, we even heard from some people today how it's not acceptable in other places, but it's acceptable in the school. And I think that's important. I think it matters. And I just don't think having something that vague is really something that I'm okay with. Anyway.
Mr. Haggerty, and then Dr. Ng.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. So, I am glad that we're having this discussion, because even though we did have a very good and thorough discussion in policy, there are a lot of questions, and Mr. Blumberg has revisited some of the discussion about pervasively vulgar. But I would say that I do think it is a vague term, and it does not provide a lot of specificity. And I actually do favor changing the language. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. But I think one thing that we all, and I think most of us here at the table recognize, but I think it's some of the community discussion that doesn't get recognized, is that there's not some commonly held consensus as to what is appropriate. And so when I see some of these emails that say pervasively vulgar is too vague a term, you need to make it something more clear. And then I was looking at my notes, some of their language is sexually inappropriate or developmentally inappropriate. We still don't know what inappropriate means. Just tonight, we heard in public comment someone who said that, what should the standard be? I'll tell you what the standard should be. Anything, if it were a movie, if it was rated PG-13 or R, should not be allowed in our schools. And I mean, come on, y'all. Maybe you have a family that's your family values and those aren't the movies you would go to, but this would include, and I looked some of them, Lord of the Rings, which I think is a literary classic, and I know that I really enjoyed reading when I was, when I was in school age. Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Star Wars, the sequels, not the original ones, and maybe you can argue the sequels weren't very good, but Harry Potter, for God's sakes. I mean, these are some of the things that one family would say if they were PG-13 were not appropriate, but I think many families, and I don't pretend to know if it's the majority or not, but that there would be many families that would think these are not only appropriate, they're important pieces of literature for youth. So, I can look at families that I have in my district that come from a very conservative religious culture, maybe overseas, where a bare leg is honestly considered, inappropriate, where it was scandalous to have a kiss in a movie on TV in their culture. And for those families, it's a sincerely held belief that that is inappropriate. But I don't believe that's the majority belief. And when we get to a situation where we have a policy like this, where we're allowing one group of parents to determine what the children of other parents can read, and again, I know they can still get it at a bookstore, get it somewhere else, but we're talking about what's available in the schools, and not everybody has their own Amazon accounts or can go and get other books. When we're talking about restricting access to these materials through the schools, personally, I would have had a different policy. I would have had our librarians, our media coordinators, using their skills, come up with a rating system, maybe, to flag mature content. And that way it could alert families as to potentially sensitive information, let students make informed choices. But that's not where we are. We're here where we're talking about restricting access to material in the school. So I do think if we can't agree what developmentally appropriate means or sexually appropriate means, and I think there's legitimate disagreement in the community about that, I think you do need a more strict definition and standard. And so to go back to where we've had cases, legal cases about obscenity and inappropriate materials, it does come back to that definition of obscenity. And it's a strict definition, but I think the reason legally we have that definition is because it's so hard to come up with agreement about what is and isn't appropriate. So I don't know if it would address your concerns, Ms. Caulfield, or other community concerns, but I would be in favor of replacing the pervasively vulgar language with language as opposed to not persuasively vulgar with not be obscene as defined by law, because I think there we do have a clear and adjudicated legal standing that we can fall back on existing case law, we can fall back on court cases, we can fall back with how law enforcement has administered it in the community. And it might not be a sharp, clear line, but I think it's the clearest line we're going to get. So I'd just like to offer those comments.
I could also add, oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody else have?
Go ahead.
I think the biggest problem is not so much, because I have heard from people on both sides, and it's not so much about not representing different communities. I think it's more the sexual material. Some of the stuff that was put up here and read in front of us, I don't know about you all, but it made me very uncomfortable. And no, I would not sit down with Grandma and read that. I did not think that that was good content. I mean, somebody bending him over, or I thought it was a girl actually, but whatever. And what they were doing, sexual acts, performing it, how to do it correctly. I mean, some of the verbiage that's in there, yes, a rating system would be much better, because then you would at least know what the content is. But I don't know what that educational material is providing. I mean, you're talking about sexual positions, you're talking about how to perform sexual acts. This is not educational material. And the more I start diving into these books, the more I see what people are really complaining about. When I was running for this campaign, I did not talk about the books at all. I did not talk to people about it. I said, we are here for reading, writing, and arithmetic. I want to stick to the educational material. The books that we're hearing about that people are getting upset about, this is not about LGTB. When we were talking about, when that man stood up here and read that book, I thought for 2 weeks until somebody told me that he was talking about a girl and a guy relationship. It has nothing to do with LGTB at all. It has to do with the sexual material, and I don't think that it belongs in this school. So I feel that we really need to have language to say when these things come up in the classroom for read aloud or for whatever. I mean, if people were arguing about the read aloud, and I think that was the other part of what I was trying to remember. With the read aloud, a teacher in an educational environment should know what they're about to read to the class. They should know that there is a purpose in what it is that they're reading. They are not randomly finding that book in their classroom. It didn't magically appear through the book fairy. It came there with purpose. They know what they're reading, and I don't think that there is a problem with a teacher knowing what it is that they're reading and why, and what purpose it has in the classroom. The kids are here to be educated. And one more comment, if I could. When we talk about how you're parenting other people's children, I feel that's exactly what we are doing, is parenting somebody's children when you're putting the material in front of them. You're taking somebody into a candy store and saying, don't look at the candy. I mean, obviously, these are kids. They're impressionable. We had the teacher of the year who, or one of the runner-ups said, you know, our kids are sponges right now. We know that. That's why we're feeding them with all this information. I'm just asking to be more mindful of what we're feeding them. That's all.
Dr. Ng and Mr. Swanson.
So I appreciate this discussion, and you know where I come from. You know where I'm a very faithful person, and I believe that there is a certain standard, that there is a standard that I live by, and I expect the standard for my children to live by. And if I were to have a child be able to access that, this kind of material that they're not ready for, I have to answer not to my wife. I have to answer to a higher power. And in good conscience, I cannot allow this to be accessible when it's not appropriate for their school, for their age group. And so, when you talk about the Supreme Court, that classic phrase, I know it when I see it. Okay. Ultimately, that's kind of a subjective type of a phrase, and I tend to agree. I mean, we need to better define what we are talking about, in our language, in this policy, even if we have to change the wording, even if we have to refer to laws that are in the books. I think that is necessary so that if anybody were to challenge it, there is something that they can go to. It's not that we are trying to make it difficult for them. They need to know where we are, what language we are coming from, what dictionary we're using. And I think I tend to agree with Mr. Haggerty. If there is some kind of a rating system that is available for our libraries, that the children would, be able to be protected from some of these material that they're not ready for. And so, I would, be happy to see something like that in our schools.
Mr. Swanson?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for the work that you've done, and Dr. Crane, your work, and the folks who put a lot of energy into this. And y'all are going to get tired of me saying this, but I'm going to keep saying it. As a former teacher for the district, the learning takes place in PLCs. When I was thinking about initiatives or pieces that I was going to bring towards my students, those conversations took place in our professional learning teams, which took place on Wednesdays after school, where teachers were, and I co-taught an English class, so this is great, so I can actually engage in this, because we took all this into consideration. We bounced ideas off of our colleagues at the time to say what worked in this class, what is something that we should look out. So this notion that teachers are just presenting information without doing that homework is a flat-out lie. I'm trying to think of a better word to use, but I'm just going to tell the truth tonight. Because I too have to answer to a higher power. And so I think for me, there's other issues that we should be dealing with. And the word that comes to, that I've been thinking about this weekend is choice. We all have a choice. I visit libraries all the time. I look through, and there's things there that I may not read, but that's my choice. There's pieces that some friends, my colleagues may read that I may not like. That's their choice. But I think this whole notion of us restricting, because that's really what it comes down to, is restricting who gets to have access to and who does not, is a problem for me. And so I think that whatever language we put forth and whatever substitutes we make, we're not going to satisfy everyone, because there's going to be ways that folks are going to try to figure out a way to challenge certain aspects. So for me, I'm satisfied with the words. I'll support the recommendations that my colleagues have made, but either way, I think this is a further issue, a driving. I'm struggling with my words here, because it's. Our teachers are trained professionals. I think it's time that we treat them as those trained professionals who have their advanced degrees. Our librarians are trained professionals who have master's degree. They understand the content. So I just want to go on record by saying that I'll support the policy. So thank you for your work, and I think this is a thank you.
Mr. Hershey?
Thank you. So I would not be in favor of changing the language without knowing what the consequences were to that. I don't have a problem with some kind of rating system for books that have something in it. That can be on the table, but let me be clear about a couple of things. One, and this was brought up tonight and in other places, this policy has no impact on people's First Amendment rights. They can come up here and complain or speak to, let me take the word complain back, or speak to what they don't like about these books. So that's totally off the board when you have a potential two-year ban, so to speak, on challenging a book. The other aspect that is getting lost in this conversation is that parents can have conversations with their kids about different books, what books they can choose, and then it is up to the kid to listen to their parents. And I really object to this idea that if this is a book right here that we're going to take it away because you can't tell your kid not to check that book out. And whereas my kid might want to go check that book out and read it because I have given permission. So at some point, we have to put this on parents to have conversations with their kids about what they are allowed to read. And if the kids go do it, that is not anyone's fault on this board or who works in a school. If parents want to accept responsibility for their kids and the choices their kids make, then that's on the parents. But have those conversations with your kids. If you don't like a particular book, tell them why, tell them what you don't want them to go read. But this idea that we are going to just, get rid of these books because some people have let's be clear, this is a very small percentage of people that have problems with some of these books. And I respect that they share their opinion here. That is great. That is part of the process. And if we have a rating system for some of them, that's fine. But this idea that we're going to get rid of them, no.
Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you. I should have just yielded to Mr. Hershey. I will add to it in this way, and I echo your sentiments. This policy isn't saying to us we're going to say yes, read any read aloud material in a classroom, right? We've certainly heard the feedback. The next policy is putting in place dealing with if said books that we've heard are read in a classroom that we're putting in place so people actually can say, I have an issue with this book and here's why. So I guess for me, I also think it's important to disaggregate what's happening. I don't disagree that parents should have a choice of what their child hears. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak into, and I've sat here literally for 2 years and a little more than that, and let people talk about anti-sexual violence and what it means. And what I will say to you is I've spent 28 years of my career working with people who were sexually assaulted. 28 years. Not one survivor can speak for another survivor, so let me dispel that first. What one person feels is important and validates or invalidates them is personal. I can tell you research is very clear that we know that when young people have sexual trauma histories, often desire and engage in consensual sex and say they want and need sexual health information to support them having healthy consensual sex because that right has been taken away from them. So I'm happy to share all the resources where we help parents talk to their students who do need access to materials for their health and well-being to keep them safe. The data also supports that we know that when young people are getting unhealthy messages from social media, porn, TV, etc., they are deeply inaccurate, harmful, and reinforce violent, oppressive social norms about sex and relationships. I think we can't keep young people from those things, but I do believe that it's important to note that the data that students who have access to accurate and appropriate, and I don't disagree with appropriate versus inappropriate material, actually wait and delay having sex because they have the information necessary to make the decisions. As parents, we believe we can tell our kids exactly what to do, and most all of us do tell them what to do. We also know that at some point they're going to make decisions based on peer pressure, their own curiosity, or just the fact that they saw it somewhere else. All of those things are real, and I believe that we have choice. I believe that it is important we talk about what is and not heard in our classrooms, but that is also distinctly a different conversation for me than what's available for students. We also talk about, in my world, that students need mirrors, windows, which is allow them to reflect themselves. For me, that's just not about LGBTQ. It's about they need to be able to see that there's nothing wrong with them. They are not vile human beings. They can still operate in the ways and principles that their families have raised them in and still be curious. One, because their frontal lobes are developed. Two, that's when it's our responsibility to guide that. And what our role is here is not to make those decisions on how parents parent or what we believe individually what our students should have access to as personal parents, because we all have that right, and I wouldn't take that right from any of us as a parent. What we do have a responsibility to do is to put in policy how to respond to what we've heard. Now, we may not agree with the language. We can have that conversation. We can certainly explore a rating system, but I do believe that we have to have language that puts into policy how supplemental material will be chosen. I certainly agree with most of the language that we have that doesn't rip or strip a teacher of the right to read a book, because I'm not a teacher, but I'm certainly hoping if we're discussing supplemental material that I have read the material that I'm talking to my PLC or my PLT about. So for me, I was not going to stand here and dispel all the things that have been that we've heard here, but it's really difficult. And I just said to Mr. Vice Chair Haggerty earlier that I live my life by the principle of everything you say to me is personal, but I don't take it personally, right? So there's no personal affront in what we believe, and we both can still be devout Christians and have very different beliefs, which I do and am. But I also believe that it is our job to govern here, recognizing we are governing how we introduce material into our class. We are governing a process to remove material, right? Because, again, that is a necessary thing for us to discuss because we didn't have, and we had not articulated how to remove materials that we don't think is appropriate for our schools. So I'm not disagreeing, and I take the privilege to say, Ms. Mahaffey, Chair Mahaffey, I'd like to bring this back to policy because I do, and I said this last time, I do want people to do their homework, and I want them to articulate to us what they want to see in policy, what changes there are, as Vice Chair Haggerty made some recommendations, and be very clear that this is about governance and not about our personal opinions, because I got lots of them. But this is about governance and how we ensure that our schools have a process to review materials and remove materials, which we did not fully have those as vetted out. And again, thanks to all the staff for the work that you've done. But our work is never done. As I said to you all, policy is organic. We should not put pencil to paper and leave it. So that is my request to you, Chair Mahaffey.
Is that a motion?
Well,
Yeah.
Superintendent is waiting to talk, so I didn't make a motion to,
That's okay.
because Superintendent is brilliant. She may have a better option.
So I do just want to make clear that if this goes back to policy, staff needs specific direction because we don't have it right now.
100% agree.
All right. Ms. Edmonds?
Thank you. There are things that I've heard at the podium the last many months because I was watching these meetings online before I got in this seat. And we have not heard any book in its entirety. They've been excerpts. And as salacious and whatever words you want to use, shocking, whatever, excerpts that we've heard, there are families in this school district that would not be bothered of their children having access to those books, and there are families too. Those are our students too. Those are our parents too. And so it is not appropriate for me to decide what, Cheryl, you and your husband choose for your children, or what it's not appropriate for me to tell you what they should and shouldn't read and have access to. I am not in favor of changing any of the language. I believe that I appreciate your comments. That's exactly what I was going to say about the professionalism of our educators and our school librarians. Mr. Swanson, thank you for those comments, because that was the point I was going to reiterate, that I trust their professionalism and their expertise. And I think that on page 2, number 3C, that it covers the teacher should first independently read the text as a whole before, with regard to the read aloud. Thank you. That's it.
So I do want to say that I support the policy as it exists right now. I had a long talk with Ms. Reed and Mr. Blumberg about some of the points around the vagueness of pervasively vulgar and what that means. And when you look at a book in its entirety, does it persist throughout the book? I'm hearing about a rating system, and the teacher in me kind of cringes because that is still subjective, and we have these principles governing, the selection of the materials, and how do we get school library materials, and how do we govern selection by teachers, for read alouds. And none of that is done in a vacuum. That is the rating system. And, I recall when I was teaching and doing my student teaching, we had literature circles, and very often the lead teacher would say, and if you don't like any of these topics, or if you find that you just need to put this book down, come talk to me. We will find something else for you. And I just think we have multiple methods of accountability here. And we heard in the policy meeting that at any time a parent can decide for their child, and we're not going to say, no, your child has to read this. We want to honor what parents believe is best for their child, but we also have to honor what our educators believe has an educational relevance to their classroom. We're not going to have To Kill a Mockingbird in an elementary school. That would not be an appropriate selection of materials for a fifth grader, but we're sure going to see it in a high school. And I think, we have multiple pieces of the literary canon, and as things move in and out, making sure that we can reflect those doors and windows that Ms. Johnson-Hostler selected. No one book can be judged by a sentence within that book. And that's why I support this policy as it stands. And, I'm welcome, if we decide as a board that we want to go back to policy and continue to have this debate, that's fine. But I will say, none of this is done in a vacuum. These are educators that are trained in pedagogy, that are trained in child development, that also take the time to honor parental choice and listen to parents if that book that is being selected for the class is not appropriate for one particular child in the class. And so I just want to reiterate what was said in our policy meeting, because we're having these discussions, and the policy as it stands, nothing is done in a vacuum here. This is all done with collaboration of educators, of folks who have their masters in library science and an understanding of child development and what is developmentally appropriate for children. And again, we're looking at a general, not every specific child, but again, we heard that things can be tailored for individual children. And that's my opinion and my piece here. I know there's further hands up, so we'll go back around. Dr. Ng?
Well, I do respect the professionals who are, part of our staff, and I think that, they are well versed on the educational relevance. They're well versed on the what these different aspects of significance for education. All I'm asking is, if there is a professional experience in understanding these books, spell it out. Spell it out. Is it educationally relevant? Is it, is there a literary importance? If there is some graphic content, give us a warning. If there is sexually explicit information, let's inform. Let's give people the informed decision. Ability to make an informed decision. There are resources out there already doing some things like that, where they are rating it not just A to F type of a grading system, but it is looking at different aspects of a book's relevance. And so, that's all I'm looking for. I'm looking at people wanting, parents have just as much of an input into this as the professionals, And, I know that choice is important, and I know that each family would have a different decision about what their child would be okay to read or not read, and I respect that. But I think that when people who are not in the day in, day out, looking at books, looking at material, it's very easy just to say, okay, Johnny, Sarah, this is the book that you're reading. Okay, have at it, not knowing what is in it and what the relevance, what is the educational value of it, and so let's consider that.
I would also like to clarify that the books that we've heard read aloud, none of them have been a part of the classroom curriculum. They've been on a shelf in a library. Mr. Haggerty, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you. I did have one question for Mr. Blumberg, and then I'd like to make a motion after hearing his answer, if I could.
All right.
Mr. Blumberg, we've talked about this issue, and you've said it before in meetings, but just to be clear for tonight, when we talk about a legal definition of obscenity, I believe you've identified maybe 3 prongs or 3 things that have to be satisfied that can help really give us a more objective definition than one that's more open. And if you could, if you're able to easily access it, I wonder if you could share that definition, because if it does provide us more guidance and something more specific, I would have an amendment just to change the pervasively vulgar, replace that pervasively vulgar language.
Happy to. Would want to just repeat that the statute that's incorporated into this draft is the one that was specifically designed by the General Assembly to address schools. So that's why it has educationally unsuitable. That's why it has language about inappropriate for the maturity level. That's not what you generally see in the obscenity standard, which is the criminal standard, which also includes more language, but also other terms that you would need to define. So the material depicts, this is obscenity, criminal statute, North Carolina, the material depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by subsection C, which we'll get to, of this section, and the average person applying contemporary community standards relating to the depiction or description of sexual matters would find the material taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest in sex. And the average adult person applying, it goes on, it states that again, there is that the material or performance lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And let me see, there's one other prong, and there are ands on all this. So to say that you would exclude the material, it needs to be all of those.
Not protected or privileged under the Constitution
of
the United States of America.
Which would be another then term that would need to be defined. So there would be multiple different terms, including temporary community standards and so on and so forth, that would need to be defined, prurient, and on and on. So I'm not saying it's a board call about what language you use. My starting point, my guidance on this is that the language of the statute that's designed for schools is the one that's most suitable in this situation. And turning to the obscenity standard, it's a criminal standard. Yes, there would be more case law on it that could help with definitions, but it's loaded with a lot more additional definitions that would need to be applied. And is that the standard then that would be used anytime a material is even selected? So I would leave it back to the board, but yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blumberg. And so Jen, I'll just end with this. Because that obscenity standard, as defined by law, has been litigated over many, many years, we have definitions for what prurient interest is. We have definitions for community standard. We have definitions for so many of these other bigger questions that I think could trouble us as we try to answer definitions of what is appropriate. Who says what is appropriate? What does appropriate mean? Whereas this law, this definition, the criminal definition, sets these up, and it has the caveats that I think are so important in it about, is it educationally or culturally relevant? Does it have artistic merit? So that under this definition, we wouldn't have situations where someone was trying to ban Michelangelo's David, or a book that might reference sex, but maybe it's done in a very, culturally appropriate, whatever way that's the standard way. I just think here with with that line, we have a clear line that I think is easier to follow, will protect our works of literature. And I think that, I know I'm getting some staff reaction or some other reaction, but I think that's it. I think the other language that Mr. Blumberg refers to while in the statute has not been litigated, is not in case law, and is not clear. And when we asked in policy to give clear examples, we didn't have examples of these definitions.
Yeah,
so
I struggle with this, and I don't pretend to be a lawyer even on TV, but, I guess the question, and Mr. Blumberg, perhaps you can answer this. Has obscenity even been defined for selection of materials in schools? Because, there's case law, that's a whole different thing. And I get that there's vagueness, but it is hugging the statute for pervasively vulgar. And I would much rather hug the statute that applies to the policy than craft new verbiage that doesn't. And I know we're in disagreement on this, and that's fine, but I would rather stick with it where it is, because I would have many, many more questions about the case law defining obscenity for school materials. Mr. Swanson?
May I call for, can I make a motion to close the debate so we can vote? Is that?
Yes.
I was in the process of making a motion before the
I'm
chair
sorry.
had spoken. So, and with all due respect, I don't mean to interrupt. Well, okay. I was in the process of making the motion. There may not be enough support for the motion. So if there's not, I don't want to waste our time. I can't read the faces, so I will. Pardon? Yeah, so I'll withdraw. I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, so Mr. Swanson, you're making a motion to call the question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
So it's the motion procedurally is to call the previous question. The motion is not in order until every member has had an opportunity to speak. I believe everybody has had an opportunity to speak. If you haven't, but then since everybody, I believe, unless somebody objects to it, has had an opportunity to speak, then there can be a motion to call the question, and if that's seconded and then approved, then the board would vote on the underlying motion, which is the motion to approve this policy on second reading as written. So there's a motion to call the question.
Okay. So the motion is to call the question. Again, this is not, this is a motion to vote on the policy. This is not the vote on the policy. Is there any?
Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Second.
There was a
Yes, there
second.
was a
Thank you.
I'm sorry. The motion was called by Mr. Swanson and seconded by Ms. Johnson-Hostler. I believe there's no discussion when the vote is called to question, correct? All right. All those in favor of returning to vote on policy 3200, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
All right, we have, I believe, 7 ayes and 2 nays. Yes? Okay. All right, the motion carries. We now return to vote on policy 3200, selection of instructional materials. And so all those in favor of adopting policy 3200, a selection of instructional materials as it stands, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Nay.
Okay, with 2 objections, I believe that's Dr. Ng and Ms. Caulfield, the motion carries, and the policy is adopted. We now move on to closed session. Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Thank you.
All right. I will now take a motion to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11A1 and A3 to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11A3 to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11A3 due to current litigation, ED versus Wake County Board of Education, number 23 EDC 01341, and J.M. Thompson Company versus Wake County Board of Education, number 20-CBS-013339, Wake County Superior Court, and to consider confidential student information protected under GS 115C-402 in the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S.C. 1232G.
So moved.
All right. We have a motion from Mr. Haggerty, a second by Ms. Johnson-Hostler. All those in favor of going into closed session, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. We are now in closed session. Thank you.